OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Half past 7 Friday morning. Welcome to OTB AM. Adrian here, Aisling over there, and Cameron there.
Hello.
Good morning.
What's happening?
All good now, Adrian. How are you?
Oh, it's good. I'm a little bit tired, I'm not going to lie. I spent 10 hours in various hospitals yesterday with the young fella.
Oh, dear. Just shopping around, was it?
Do you know, have you heard of the Lego up the nose trick?
Ah, yes.
Oh no, it doesn't sound good. I haven't heard of it. Fill me in.
Yeah, he managed to get a piece of Lego, stuck up his nose yesterday morning. Tiny little piece of Lego. It's the tiny stuff. He's obsessed as they are. He's 6 at that age, obsessed with the stuff, and was like trying to jam the little tiny. It's probably like half the size of your little fingernail,
right?
And was trying to jam it onto another piece. It flicked. From what I can gather, from what happened.
Oh, is this his version of events?
It flicks up, exactly.
Yeah.
It flicks up and goes up his nose. I actually wouldn't overly doubt that that's what happened, and I'd say he went chasing it, and that's where the trouble kicked in.
Oh no!
So it was gettable when we went to the first place, but in the effort to take it out, went up a little bit more.
Oh no!
And then we went to the second place. In the effort to take it out, we went up a little bit more, and by 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, we were going for a general anaesthetic and trying to fish it out. And after all of that, he swallowed it. He had swallowed it at some point, which is fine. We will never see it again, needless to say. But yeah. So that's
and why did you go from place to place?
What's that?
Why did you go from place to place?
Well, we went to the first place because we thought this is nothing. It's sort of minor enough,
right?
And so because you could see it, you know, if you looked in a little bit, you could see it. So we'll be able to fish that out. But the fishing out wasn't sufficient to. It just ended up putting it back up a bit more.
Yeah.
So then, where we were in the first place, then it became too significant for them to deal with, and then we went on to the next place, and it was fun all day.
Jeez.
How was he? Was he okay?
He was flying it, and he was grand with the piece of Lego up the nose. He didn't give. He was like, "Can we go home? Like, I just don't want to do any more of this." It was the shuffling around to get the thing out.
Yeah.
That's what was driving it bonkers.
Yeah, I'd say. Yeah.
Oh God, well that is a good story from David to tell.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard like a million times this happened to kids before, and I've always, every time, been like sitting in my high horse going, "What is wrong with these kids that they're slinging Lego up their nose?" And I was talking to some of the people, brilliant people in Crumlin Children's Hospital yesterday, and they were saying this is not unusual. This happens all the time, and more often than not, it's in the ear.
Yeah,
that the kids are sticking the Lego in their ear.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Which would be a deliberate
I
kind
don't
of like,
want to know.
where am I going to put this bit of Lego?
Yeah.
Well, listen, there's only a certain amount of... Anyway, that's happened to me before.
Has it?
I just thought the Cameron was very like, oh yeah. And I was like, do you know a lot about this, Cameron?
Went through that, but a couple of weeks ago got it out again, so it's fine.
A couple of weeks
ago?
No, I'm joking.
Whoa, we just unearthed something here. What happened to you
there?
As a kid?
No, I think my brother... Now, it actually didn't happen to me. I think it happened to my brother a few times.
Okay.
We were a big Lego family, so naturally, you know, curiosity gets the better of you sometimes, and you just see what happens.
When you say it to people to begin with, they assume that it's like one of the giant Lego blocks.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. But they properly look at you in a kind of Ralph Wiggum sense.
Yeah.
Forever then, where it's like,
it's fair enough.
He can't be left alone with the scissors.
We could talk about it forever, you know. What I mean? It's like, and also you get an insight into the actual, you know, work that goes on at a hospital like that, and our issue was probably the lowest of levels of importance of what was going on there yesterday. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I was
glad
to hear he's okay.
Good story to have.
Yeah. There you go.
Share your Lego stories with us this morning.
Favourite sets.
People generally do, like when we wander off on these tangents.
5
people
worst
are
pieces.
like, "Oh, we'd like to." Pardon the pun. We've loads to get through on the show, and we've loads of great stuff to talk about. It's our final weekend, and we might talk a little bit about the excitement of that in a few minutes' time as well. But we wanted to touch on the fact that Jordan Henderson's now been confirmed the worst kept secret in sport. He's gone to Saudi Arabia for what I would describe as a money smash and grab job. Get in, get the cash, get out of there. Cristiano Ronaldo showed them the way. We can do this. We can go in, knock a couple of really good years out of our career for money wise anyway. Messi obviously was doing it with his endorsement of Saudi Arabia, even though he didn't eventually take the playing move. We shouldn't laud him too much. Like, he was definitely there supporting as an ambassador. Beckham took the dough, obviously, from Qatar during the World Cup as well. Henderson now, you've Benzema, obviously, Firmino, Kante.
Yeah, Mbappe turned it down.
Mbappe was like a cigarette paper away from just doing it. So like, I wouldn't, I saw somebody saying, like, I can't believe that, he's turning down the PSG, the righteousness of PSG to make a move to Saudi Arabia. So, look, for the source of money.
You're at PSG, of course.
The list is going to get bigger and bigger, and like, where is it going to end is really up to the Saudis. Do they have the desire to continue to attract the world's best players to Saudi Arabia? Because the players are going to continue to say yes, right? Like, I don't think there's any doubt about that. When that eye-watering sums of money are on the table, I think they're just going to keep saying yes. So I think, obviously, a lot of the fallout of the Henderson stuff has been his support of the LGBTQ plus community, the rainbow laces, the rainbow armband, the hand wringing around the World Cup, and we want to take all these stances, and bad old FIFA aren't going to allow us to do it. And like, it just turns out it was all nonsense. Like, and I do think that the worst mistake that we make, and I fall into it in the same way that everybody else does, is investing too much in the righteousness of players who ultimately, and I don't overly judge them, because like, we can have a conversation and most likely will know about whether, because it always comes back to, would you do that? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like, it's a crazy hypothetical situation. I wouldn't overly judge the players that are doing it, because the sums of money are crazy. And like, if somebody offered you that money, your first response, whatever way you look at it, wouldn't be, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, it's what do I have to do?
You're going to sit and certainly have a think about it for a little while. So where you end up after that, who knows? But I do think that we need to stop falling into the trap of investing too much in, like, the Henderson case just proves this now. No more, like, come on, Jordan Henderson, or whoever the next person will be who's wearing the rainbow laces or wearing the rainbow armband, because it's paper thin.
Well, it shows that all that support is completely conditional and completely circumstantial, depending on where you are. Like,
it's not really support, I think, is probably the point I'm making.
That's the hope. But optics. Yeah, it's not support if you can be bought, essentially. You look at that, and I accept your point that they're huge sums of money, and players, I've heard the case made before that, you've only one career, so you have to kind of take what comes and take the best opportunity. Yeah. But I remember Ger said a quote one time that it really stuck with me. Are you not a citizen of the world? Do you not understand this stuff? Do you not go, like, all these people who end up going to Saudi Arabia, the question or the response is always, I'm here for football. I'm not here for politics. That's not what I'm doing. I'm a footballer first. And I'm not here to field all those questions, which I don't think is good enough, really. I think these are social questions that are in our society. They are, I would say, the LGBTQ plus community, especially in a club like Liverpool, would make up a sizable part of that supporter base. Mm-hmm. So you can't look at a move like that as anything other than a middle finger to them, really. Yeah, that's the point. It's not so much a case of, well, how much are your principles worth? It's that your legacy is that all of that work that you've done to support that community is gone now. And Thomas Hitzelsberger made that kind of allusion in his tweet yesterday, excoriating Henderson, that it's not even a case of I'm not supporting them anymore. It's that everything that I'd done up to that point was meaningless, absolutely meaningless.
Yeah, I think there's a few strands to it. Like when you're saying there, Cameron, that they're there for football. Like, I often wonder the standard in Saudi Arabia. If you're there for football, really, you could go backwards playing out there. Now, a lot of these, players that are going there might be coming to the end of their careers, and it might make sense that way for them. And okay, they look at the money. We have some players that are going out there. Jota, in particular, from Celtic, he's only 24 years of age. He was on the cusp of, getting in the Portuguese team, and now he's gone out there. So you look at that as well of where is his career going to go after this, and obviously morally then as well. Like, you have a short career, you've one life. Like, I think you do need to look at your own morals and what's important to you in life, because at the end of the day, football is just football. And are you going to be happy if you've all this money in the bank, but really morally your family. I'm sure there's a hell of a lot of people within your family circle that have so many people within that community, you know, that are going to be disappointed by all of this. I'm sure himself, other people as well. I'm sure morally they have to be a little bit like this isn't right, you know. And
I think that point is spot on, and he has set fire to all of that, Jordan Henderson now. So he has gone, I'm an advocate for you, you've no voice, and I'm going to be an advocate for you, and I'm going to, you know, really publicly stand behind you and say that I'm in your camp, and whatever support you need, I'm here for you. And he just went up in a puff of smoke. He went, there's a trailer load of cash over here, and I'm going to take it. I hope that, like, even the players that are saying, I'm doing this for football, like, it's the live golfers who went to grow the game. Piss off, like.
Yeah.
You know,
they've subsequently admitted, no, not really.
Yeah, and it never was, like, it's, you know. But
then you look what happened there. Like, and Rory McIlroy was so outspoken about it all, and in the end, he looked like the one who was the idiot in the end.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Do we expect too much? Do we, on that point of, like, investing in the rainbow laces and the armband and bending the knee and all that sort of stuff? Do we expect too much? Is that something we should stop? Is the Henderson case evidence that we should stop expecting sports people to be advocates for stuff that we know, by and large, they couldn't really give two hoots about?
We don't know that, and I think sport is so powerful that we need to take these stands. We have to speak out at these moments. I think I would like to say majority, maybe I'm just living in a bubble, but I would like to say that the majority of them who do speak out and take these stands do mean it. Like
until the trailer or the cash arrives. That's my point. Like, I think I'm sure Jordan Henderson meant all that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you mentioned before we came on air about the video that was dead black and white at the armband, the rainbow armband and stuff. I'm certain that Jordan Henderson woke up or whatever, saw that video and went, oh Jesus.
Yeah, he wasn't told about that.
I'm sure he meant all that.
He signed
but at the same time,
he knew what he was signing up.
Setting a match to all of that.
Oh, you
had no possibility to go, by the way, I'm still with you. That's bullshit. Like,
you
that's gone.
waive your right to have any say in what they do from that point on. And your point on, do we expect too much of athletes? I don't think so, because we are all so familiar of how big a cultural phenomenon football and sport more generally is, and how much of a platform it is for certain cases. And we've seen countless times in history athletes using that platform to champion a cause, rightly or wrongly. Sometimes there are other causes that we don't agree with, but they've been able to use that, and that's kind of gone away just a little bit over the last while because of the age of social media, I think, and the whataboutery, and you said this, and Jordan Henderson is a great example of a kind of, you were a supporter of LGBTQ plus rights, and here's you saying such and such, and we've seen loads of players going, I would never go to Saudi Arabia, or I support this, and then end up going. But the problem is, if players and managers aren't using that platform, others are, which is why I think Just Stop Oil have been really successful and gotten people's wicks so easily by using sports events, because they recognise that it is a massive opportunity to get your message out there. So if players and sport is still going to be used for causes, I don't care. And that whole notion of sport and politics not mixing, I think, is nonsense.
Crazy, yeah.
But if players and managers aren't doing it, someone will do it, and it will be very inconvenient for the rest of the sporting community. So you might as well take a stand, I think. What have you to lose?
Where does this stop though? Like, it's so soulless. It's taking the best players out of, say, the Premier League and the likes. Like, I'm sure that's going to dilute that too. And then we see them going to play this standard that we're told isn't great. Where does it end? Like,
unless they flood that league with, like,
I know, and which they're doing. They're absolutely doing.
Like, I mean, does at that point become, you have to watch it, like?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, I don't know. It does feel like a million miles away from that, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you don't have to watch it. The Saudi League and the Saudi clubs have clearly identified the general trend of how football is supported these days, which is that it's players rather than clubs. So if I can sell an Al Ettifaq shirt with Henderson on the back, or Al Nassr shirt with Ronaldo on the back, that's just as good as Ronaldo playing for, in fact it's probably better than Ronaldo playing for a Premier League club, say like a United, in terms of getting,
you mean globally, like that there are people around the world buying
people still wear those jerseys, they've identified
what sort of numbers. That's actually a good point. I hadn't thought about. Like, I wonder I wonder what sort of numbers are they selling Al Atifak? Is that the name of the jerseys with Henderson on the back?
Yeah, how many they are. But they sell even crappy replicas, like knockoff ones. It still gets the message across that he's playing for that club. And it feeds into what I think is becoming a trend in football and sport more generally of kids today, and here I go sounding like a 90-year-old man, it's the TikTokification of sport. That you just want the moments. You want to see Jordan Henderson absolutely wowing the crowd against insert Saudi team here, and that'll be your clip.
Jordan Henderson recently, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's it.
I don't know what they think they're
terrible
getting.
example. But like Ronaldo going through 10 absolutely terrible players, because that's the stuff on TikTok with a song, and go, oh, what a goal by Ronaldo. That's how you get to that fan base.
Any of that stuff that I've seen on TikTok, and I have seen it, you see the goalkeeper like thumping the ground or sitting there so disappointed, and you're like, what? Like, really? Are you like serious? Like, come on now. How disappointed can you be that you're like this bog standard goalkeeper and one of the world's best players is like
against
planted one Basji. Exactly. Like, acting your disappointment is quite the art. Right, there's a good few comments coming in. Maybe they aren't hypocritical, but under pressure to perform to avoid the ire of the mob and to keep the brands happy, says Michael. Latte Larry, there's a man after my own heart with that handle. Lesson learned: don't speak out, don't offer support for any group for fear you'll be torn apart like Henderson. Which I guess is saying, what should Henderson have done? Should he have said nothing through the years on the basis that maybe he's going to take the payday at the end? I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of a ground in between.
Maybe that's an alternative solution, or just stand your ground. Your actions have consequences, and your words have consequences. So it paints a picture of you.
Shane says it's fairly grim. Henderson is joining a club who finished 7th in the Saudi League last season with an average crowd of 5,500 people. He couldn't care less what people think. Us normal folk need to think about it. But these footballers are already very rich, so it's pure greed on their part, says Fergus Keogh. And Darragh O'Toole wondering how much Saudi money would you need to shove a piece of Lego up your nose?
That's a good question, actually. Yeah,
it just kills me that the love for the game and like why they got into it and the talent they have, all of that is just out the window now. Like they forget completely where they started out, and now it is all just about the money. And this is where Henderson's probably going to finish his career now. Like that kills me, but maybe that's just me living in this bubble of like the passion for sport and that's what gets me. I just think it's soulless now, and we were talking about it the other day. We actually did a panel and Michael Dermot-Cawley was on it, and he just said, I don't rewatch it anymore, I'm not into it anymore, like, and thank God the GA hasn't gone down this route. And when we're all the question of professionalism, if it was to come in, that we're so unique in that way that we have this games that it's not professional and it is for the love, and we shouldn't lose that. But that's my point in it all. I just think, God, it is so soulless now at this point, and I don't know where it ends.
And I think that is the nub of it for me. And I think that Henderson, in some ways, this is good because, it allows us to remove the veil of it being anything other than just a big money grab. And I saw Jurgen Klopp hitching his wagon to Henderson yesterday with this very sort of emotional, my skipper, you've been my longest serving skipper speech, and on the Liverpool channels. And I don't know, maybe what else is he supposed to do? But I know that Liverpool fans are also torn over it as well because
absolutely. I was in Anfield doing the tour a few weeks ago.
Were you? Yeah.
And you go into the home dressing room, and Henderson's name block was already taken off his locker in the home dressing room. So they've obviously made peace with it.
Was there a little bit of a gag? Was there like
look at that? Yeah.
Was there?
I think I think there was a little bit of people filming themselves. Not for long.
Yeah.
It was very funny.
Any good?
Good tour. Yeah. Not one of the better stadium tours, I think, in terms of it. I'm going to annoy a lot of people when I say this, but Liverpool fans are very kind of we're the best club in the world type. And
shots fired.
A little bit, yeah. Whoa. Yeah, gosh, a team's fan base loving their club, who knew? But I would have loved a bit more kind of history of the ground and stuff like that, and it was very much a sort of CV of Liverpool's greatest hits throughout the stadium. And you think,
as in what, like
As in, they were just saying, well, here's our 7
Is that
European
another blow?
titles.
Is that
No,
another
it wasn't. It wasn't. It's too early in the morning for me to be anyway. Sharp like that, actually.
But I would have, like, they didn't really explain when the ground had been built or anything like that. And that
Okay.
was a bit of a disappointment. They went into where You Never Walk Alone came from, and you sit in the cop and all that. And it was,
Where did it come from?
well, they started singing it. They used to play the top 40 before games. And
Okay.
it was one of the songs that just
Jerry and the
apparently
Pacemakers, was
took.
it?
Yeah, Jerry and the Pacemakers, correct.
So we came directly from that, and then
Then they were like, oh, we'll use. I think they played it when they came back after they won the FA Cup.
Yeah, all right.
That was the first song they played, and the fans kind of sang along. But after that, yeah, it was a grand.
the Hill rating out of 5.
Hill rating out of 5. I would say 5.5. Good to see, but
5.5 out of 5.
I have a 10 out of 10.
Okay,
Everything's out of 10.
Okay,
come on.
I did say out of 5, but
I don't. I'm not. 5 is a cop out.
Okay.
You might as well go with 2.
Not a ringing endorsement. Okay, the All-Ireland final weekend as well, obviously. It's like the excitement of it is off the charts, and we'll talk a little bit about the 2 semi-finals, of course, in Thurles as well tomorrow night. But like, just the intrigue when you get to this time of the year, like what damage is Clifford going to do? Are they going to go man on them? Is Pascal going to get back to doing what he did in the quarterfinals? Will Cluxton finally concede a goal? Will he finally get the 9th All-Ireland? Will Mick Fitz, is it Mick Fitz and James McCarthy, will they get the 9 All-Irelands?
Yeah.
Will Barry keep Fenton quiet? You've Desi, you've Jack O'Connor. I see Desi being very emotional about James McCarthy in the papers this morning. The history of it, the hill, the colours, the smells. Just the anticipation of this is, I can't wait for it, I must say. Like, as somebody who never really has any interest in the specific teams when it comes around to it, I'm a fully sort of paid up member of the occasion.
Yeah, I think, and we think back to the All-Ireland semi-final last year as well, like what a game that was. Shawnee O'Shea, last kick of the game, into the hill. Unbelievable. I think any time they meet, it's an epic battle.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be any different. And probably that we've the biggest names in the game are coming up against each other. Did we ever think that we'd see David Clifford and Stephen Cluxton, in an All-Ireland final again? Like, no chance. I don't think anybody did. And as you said,
He's
will he
score a goal, isn't he?
Will he concede a goal? And could it be David Clifford?
What do you think?
Oh God, absolutely. There's possibility.
I
It's
think
David
it's
Clifford.
a strong chance, yeah. And I also think that, like, it's a footnote, but I do think that, like, there'd be nothing better than rubbing it into them by saying, well, we'll beat you, and also that
We got that goal.
that record. I see John Fogarty's always tweeting he's got X minutes now without conceding a goal.
Yeah.
They'd love that. Kerry would love that. That's the sort of bitterness that's going on there.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
Housery. Yeah. I don't know. I was talking to someone in the lift today on the way up. I felt the build up to the final generally has been a little bit more subdued than usual. I don't know. I haven't been swept away by it, where
That's
it's like,
because
this is
you're
huge.
watching the rugby championship, Cameron. You don't care about this sort of stuff.
Yeah. I'm reading Connacht rugby blogs instead of
Yeah.
Probably the fact as well that the hurling was only last week.
Yeah.
You just had maybe 2 weeks.
And is it that our attention's a bit divided because we've got a World Cup going on? I mean, the Open was last weekend, so there was still a bit of fallout from that. And then you get to Wednesday, and it's like, oh yeah.
Thing is,
But I don't know. I've just found this year, and maybe we're still kind of bedding in this July final structure now. But I haven't been. It hasn't been this kind of all-encompassing thing the way it would have been maybe a few years ago. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. If anyone else feels like that, please give me some love. But
Yeah, no, I definitely know what you mean, but I probably think it's probably because they're back to back now. That if we had a little bit more space, we could probably hone in a bit more on each team.
Yeah.
When we're only getting over the celebrations in Limerick and all of that, and we're straight in then to the football. But no, it's look, we have the 2 best teams. They're in the final. Like, I think the midfield battle in particular is probably one that's
going to be class.
the talking point. Like, obviously,
Fenton and Barry.
Yeah,
So
incredible.
interesting.
And
Yeah.
we've seen Dermot O'Connor and what he's done this year, and he's really stepped up and into that role. So that's going to be epic in itself. And then who's firing on the day? I know that's an easy cop-out to say that, but if David Clifford has the game of his life, or at the other end it's Conor O'Callaghan that's having a game of his life, that's probably what it's going to come down to. These big players on the big day being able to step up. But yeah, really looking forward to it. Are you heading in?
yeah, bringing the
good stuff.
young fella with the no leg up his nose anymore. So I can't wait. A lot of people won't be happy that there's under 8-year-olds at Croke Park and All-Ireland final day. of course, but that's
No, like that is unbelievable for them to experience.
but there was there was something said a few years ago about where tickets should go on these sort of days, and that they shouldn't go to anyway.
No, I don't believe that for a second.
Again, me too. Clifford doesn't do quiet days. That's the thing, like where some of the other players, like it was obviously the battle off between himself and Shane Walsh last year, and then like for probably understandable reasons Shane Walsh is quite Clifford just doesn't tend to do that. Like he tends to,
he's got a kind of Maradona quality to him. I think when the stories will be written, and thankfully we're watching all this stuff, but certainly when the stories are written of Maradona when they won the 86 World Cup, it was very much Maradona pulled this team of average players through and won a World Cup, which isn't true at all. This Kerry team is fantastic, but it's just that he is such a higher quality than anything else in the country that it feels like the rest pale in comparison. But yeah, I think it's pivotal, excuse me, on how well he does. If he has a really good game, Kerry will win.
What's it like? A bad game for him, an average game for him is 7 or 8 points.
Well, against Tyrone in the quarter-final, everybody said he probably had not his best game, and he had that, the pass from out along the sideline where the ball was about to go over the sideline and he kicks it over his head. So he had a genius moment in that game as well, and that's probably the difference. He can do these magic moments out of nothing, and he probably was a bit quieter that day, which was a dangerous thing then going into the semi-final, because then you saw what he did against Derry then. I got 9 points that day. Well, Chrissy McCaig did a good job on him. I often think it's hard now to mark a player like Clifford if you think about how the game has changed. So you obviously have the mark. So how do you mark a player like Clifford? Do you, as a defender, you're always told don't get out in front, almost let them have the ball and push them out. Because if a player like David Clifford, if you go to get out in front of him and then he gets it and he just turns, you're done. So how do you mark a player like him? Do you let him get the ball and take the mark? He can score a mark from anywhere. And
also the size disparity. Like, it's not as if Mick Fitzsimons says, if Clifford's out in front and he wants to get the ball, Mick Fitzsimons ain't getting it off him.
Yeah, exactly. You've that then too. So I'm always like, it must be such an impossible job. But yeah, I think it's all about probably stopping the supply. That's probably how you need to think about it.
Dan Delaney agrees with you, Cameron. Final build-up very low key. Same with the hurling. He says games way too close together. Ashton's correct. If Clifford performs, Kerry will win. Simple as. Sean O'Shea better than Clifford in my opinion to somebody else. And it's the wrong time of the year. Usually kids are back in school. Usually adds to the buzz.
We don't get the school shots anymore of going to various players' primary schools.
Oh yeah.
Which was always a part of the build-up for me.
When Henderson does his first interview, says PWGC here on YouTube, with the Western Press, someone should ask him straight up, do you still support LGBTQ plus issues, and see what he says. Will his club stop him talking on these issues? I mean, yeah. I'm sure that as much as we discussed the black and whiting out of the rainbow armband, he wasn't knocking on the door the following morning to go, by the way, would you mind not doing that again, because I really support those issues. Like, that's not a conversation that happens.
No, because he's signed up now. He knows what he signed up to.
The opposite. The silence is deafening, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something that kind of just a last wee tidbit from, because we've the ladies semi-finals as well to get to, which we could preview in a minute, but something that really is annoying me about the World Cup on the subject of football is social media teams putting up the team announcements as videos rather than photos. So have you seen those?
Yeah.
The Canada one came out.
What's annoying you about that?
It's really annoying. Like, just put up the team first and then have some sort of glossy team reveal video, because you have to wait through.
It's not good content though, you know what I mean?
It's really frustrating.
You're thinking of it from a work point of view.
Oh yeah.
And you're able to go and just get it.
It's an entirely self-serving gripe I have with this, but I don't know, it's too much, and you're waiting, and then maybe 10 seconds from the end they'll reveal the team. It's all this build-up. Not a fan of it.
Owen Collins is challenging you, Aisling. He says money is always at the heart of it. How many GAA players truly love the AFL?
Yeah,
it's a slightly different dynamic, but maybe.
Yeah, no, I get it. Money is always at the heart of it. I just was making the point that I think it's nice that we actually have this organisation now, that it's not all about, you're there because you're getting X amount of money. You're actually there playing because you actually love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you get the opportunity to go to the AFL and you have a professional lifestyle, geez, absolutely.
Go for it,
yeah,
it's slightly different in that AFL is paid compared to GAA unpaid, whereas, you know, if you're going from Premier League to the Saudi League, it's an extra zero on your salary.
It is
probably a little bit of a difference there.
It is a different dynamic, right? And one other one here, where's it gone? You're living in fantasy land, of course they're taking the money, who wouldn't? And you know, that's a deeper conversation that we might get back to again at some point. So the two semi-finals tomorrow night in Thurles, Kerry against Mayo 5 o'clock, Cork and Dublin 7:30. Actually, you're heading down to both of them.
Yeah.
And obviously with your own crowd out now,
I know
everybody fancies a bit of a lash off this, don't they? Like, are Kerry the slight favourites, or what's the overall?
Yeah, I would say that's probably the overall feeling. Obviously they knocked Meath out in the last game. It was down in Kerry and it was an awful night, a brutal night. Yeah, it really was. But Kerry, you definitely see that they've come on a lot since last year. They've really grown as a team, and you've seen the likes of Louise Galvin was lining out in midfield for them. What a player. And yeah, I think for Louise Niemer-Hertig and everything that she has gone through with this Kerry team, it would be incredible to see her back in an All-Ireland final. Obviously we saw them there as well last year. So yeah, I think for them the big news that came out was that Siofra O'Shea, their captain, she's out again with a cruciate ligament injury, which happened only in training during the week. It's her second time doing it.
Declan Quill was saying that they had basically had a wake afterwards. They had to fully sit down and address it and sort of grieve it and work through it.
Because she's their captain, and you know, she's really stepped up. I talked to her at the start of the year, and just when she was taking the captaincy, you know the way to do it in Kerry, if obviously you win your championship there. So she took it on, and yeah, she really grown into the role, and she had a big part to play again for Meath, you know, against Meath in that win. So it's a massive loss for them, and just terrible to see that happening to so many players, and especially when they're coming to the end of the season as well. You know, these big games in Croke Park, if they make the final, it's just, it'd be terrible for her to see her on the sideline now if that is the case. But yeah, they're coming up against Mayo, who have done well, have gone under the radar a little bit. I think Mayo have done really well. They've a young team coming through. Obviously they had that experience coming back as well, and they bet Galway by, I think it was a point in the end. So they definitely are going under the radar. They probably like it like that, coming up against Kerry. And then the other side of things, then Cork and Dublin. I was at the Cork and Armagh game down in Armagh, and they knocked Armagh that day to progress, and wasn't overly impressed with Cork that day. It was a messy night, and obviously they had to travel to Armagh, but I just felt like they aren't fully firing yet, so there could be a big performance in Cork yet. And obviously then we seen Dublin, they had a really comfortable win over Donegal to get to this point, so they will be coming into this full of confidence, but at the same time we might see a response from Cork, because I really didn't think they would have been happy leaving Armagh that day. They only had a 2-point win, and there was no Amy Mackin playing for Armagh. And
I saw the managers stepped away from Armagh as well during the week. You look at the Kerry result and you kind of think, against Meath obviously, and given the nature of it, and you sort of try to read a fair bit into it, they'd scored 2-7 in the first half. Brutal conditions, and they end up scoring, like hanging on, scoring a point I think in the second half. Is it you would want to use it as a benchmark or a reference to be able to preview the game and say, like you were kind of talking about, you know, this has had continuing involvement of this team. Is it almost like, is there anything in it, just given the conditions, the you know, fast start, loads of scores, blitzing the team out of it in the first half enough to be able to hang on, or is it just worthless given that, you know, ideally there's not going to be a repeat of that madness on Saturday night? Yeah,
I don't think you can read into it very much. Like, we played in a final in the Paddy O'Shea tournament, and it just reminded me of this so much. Like, when you seen the players running at the wind, they were pulled back. You could see that on TV. That I remember the final we played in, and it was very much like that. Like, one half we scored, the next half they scored, and that's exactly what happened in the game. You can't take very much from it. The conditions were terrible, you know. But I think what you take from it is probably the other performances that Kerry have put in through the year, and you look at that, and I do think that they probably are the informed team at the minute. It's hard to know. It's so wide open. Like, I would have said Donegal, you know, they had showed signs of it, then they got, you know, annihilated in the end by Dublin. So yeah, it's hard to read into this year, which is great though. You know, it is wide open. But I don't know, if I was looking at it, I'd probably think it could be a Kerry Dublin.
The Kerry Mayo game should be a good game to watch in the sense that like they both like to go at it. There's no huge sort of defensive styles. They like to get their scores.
Yeah, and I think you always get that within the women's game as well, which is so refreshing to watch. Like when I got to the Armagh and Cork game, I just sat there and was like, love this, being there, seeing everyone going at it. You know, the forwards stay up in the forward line. You know, it might sound stupid. D, like, you don't watch the game and you see 15 behind the ball and then 15 behind the ball. It's everyone stays somewhat in their positions. Look, there is tactics to go into it too, don't get me wrong, there's a hell of a lot of tactics to go into it, but it's very enjoyable to watch, and players go out and express themselves, and you'll definitely see that in the Kerry and Mayo game. Long balls inside, quick balls inside, girls big running off the shoulder.
In Thurles, like it's wide
it is
open,
exactly.
It really lends itself to that type of
play.
Like
so it is. It's very exciting. And I think it's anyone's game because it's so wide open. There's not a hell of a lot between the teams, which is great to see. So
Kerry Dublin.
I think Cork Dublin game in particular will be the tightest of the two.
As in, you think Kerry are going to do a bit of a number of Mayo?
I just think that Kerry should have enough now. To get over the line. Right. But between the Cork and Dublin, I think at the minute what I'm seeing, maybe Dublin, but they haven't been firing all year either. So everybody's had their moments in this championship, and then they've fallen down as well. So it's so hard to know.
All right. Well, you whetted the appetite nicely. Kerry obviously dogged as well, like they were as they were against me. It will be interesting to see how much of that game sort of is threaded into this, and you know, because if they can carry a lot of that over, then suddenly they are worthy favourites heading into the final. And
I know it was hard to see Meath being knocked out. There was a lot of talk all year. Obviously they didn't have a smooth year in terms of the management stepping away and everything else in between, so wasn't great to see them knocked out, but I think they'll take a lot from it. They definitely will, and it'll be interesting to see what happens now next year if Jenny Rispin is going to stay on. I haven't heard anything yet, but we'll definitely
the rise was so meteoric that like there had to be levelling at some point or other, and it's not as if they've fallen off the face of the planet either. Like they're there, thereabouts. So,
and a lot of those girls that went travelling, that I'm sure will be back. So I'd say watch out for Meath again next year.
Shots fired already. It's 7 minutes past 8. You're watching OTB AM, the sports breakfast show from Off the Ball. Here's what's coming up for you between now and 10 o'clock this morning. We're going to be talking to the former Republic of Ireland manager Sue Ronan in just a few minutes to just take a bit of a breath after the week that was, and looking forward, of course, to Ireland's final group game as well. Ger Brennan is going to be with us to preview the men's All-Ireland final from 20 past 8, maybe a little bit after that this morning. Gearóid McDaid finished second in the men's shortboard at the EuroSurf 2023 in Portugal yesterday, so we'll chat to Gearóid a little bit later in the show. Shane Hannon is not somebody you hear from that often, nor his guest today, who is Owen Sheehan. So we'll hear from the two lads. It's been a meeting of minds down in Fireys over the last couple of days, and sandwiched between all of that, Matt Williams will take a pulse on the rugby championship as it winds up, a curtailed rugby championship winds up, and he'll be with us just after 9 this morning, and then Colin Boyle to further preview the men's All-Ireland final at 9:30 this morning. So that's where we're at. Loads of comments coming into us about all manner of stuff and all manner of opinions about the various talking points that we've had so far in the show, so please do feel free to keep those coming into us, and we'll come back to them a little bit later. But as I mentioned, the dust has settled, so let's get the thoughts of the former Republic of Ireland manager Sue Ronan on Ireland's progress so far. Sue, good morning to you.
Morning, guys. How are we keeping?
We're keeping all right. We haven't had you on, I don't think, since the most recent game, of course, and obviously there's the pride and the emotion that we've sort of spoken about, and I suppose this is maybe an opportunity for us to, with the dust settled a little bit, to get into more critical analysis. The recriminations have started. I've heard and watched and read a lot during the week about that. What are your two down, 2 defeats? What are your major takeaways before the final game?
Well, look, as you said, I mean, there is overwhelming pride in the team for getting this far, for going toe-to-toe two of the big teams in the world, I guess. It's a shame you spend ages prepping for a tournament, the build-up since we qualified last October or November, whenever it was, and then it's over very quickly. Really, within 6 days, I suppose, we're out. Unfortunately, the team need to move on very quickly because, you want to end on a high, you want to get a result against Nigeria. That's not a dead rubber of a game in any way, shape or form. Obviously they can still go through now, but when you look at it, I think we definitely deserve more from both the games. I don't think we showed the best of ourselves. Maybe against Australia, there was probably some nerves there. It was a huge occasion, huge crowd. We know all that. We really waited. We weren't in any danger, but we didn't really put our best foot forward, I think, until we went behind. But, it was so different against the Canadians. And I was saying to myself, why didn't we play like this against Australia? We started off so confidently, got in their faces. They didn't know what hit them really. We got everything right, tactics right. Our press was in unison, everything, and then scored a cracker of a goal. And really, it was the equivalent, I suppose, of having a boxer on the ropes. And unfortunately, we just didn't get that killer blow. We didn't get that second goal, which was badly needed, really. And then, the sucker punch conceding just before halftime really knocked us. And then, the second half, it was so disappointing. It was like we fell off the edge of a cliff, really. In fairness, they galvanised. They made some great substitutions. Huge experience came on the pitch, and they were able to lift it up a level. And the goal obviously came at the right time for them. And they were a different team in the second half, as were we. Unfortunately, we went the other way and they went up, and we weren't that great. So, yeah, the recriminations have started, as you say. There's a lot of whispers around, I suppose, now a lot of discussion around Vera and her, whether she should stay, whether she should go, and that's always going to happen, I guess. And should this player been in, should that player been in, what team we should have played, and you get that, I suppose, at every tournament. But yeah, really, overwhelming pride, I guess, with the team. I definitely think there's more in this team. I think we've a taste now of qualifying for a major tournament, and hopefully we push on from here. You'll see us going on to qualify for the next Euros, and then and after that, other major finals.
Just the point too that you made there, that why didn't we play against Australia how we played in the first half against Canada? Why do you think that is? Like, we played a lot more on the front foot with energy, a bit of ambition about us, when maybe against Australia, was it a little bit of naivety, maybe being a bit cautious because park the bus maybe and hope for the draw?
Yeah, I'm sure it was a cautious approach, and look, we need to understand, I suppose, our level. Yes, we've qualified, we've done fantastic. We're still behind these top teams, there's no doubt, but I still think we can give them a good game on any given day, and we can take it to them, as we showed against the Canadians in the first half, as we showed against Australia in the last 20 minutes. I suppose maybe we wanted to ease our way into the tournament. We didn't want to concede anything. We wanted to be difficult to break down, which we were. Everyone's aware that the system this team plays, it's quite a conservative approach. That's Vera's style. That's what she wants from this team. And I don't think that was ever going to really change in the tournament. I suppose going into that second game, we knew we needed something, so it had to change a bit. I think if we sat back and defended and invited Canada on and given them the momentum, that would be absolutely the wrong thing to do. So we proved we can take it to these teams. So I think we can definitely mix it. And I think this team is ready to take that next step now, to evolve a bit, where yes, you can be compact. Yes, you can be in your low block when you need to be against the really good teams at vital moments in matches, and those vital moments are probably just before halftime and after halftime, which is when we've been conceding. But there's also moments when we can take the game to our opponents, and unfortunately I think we look short of ideas how to score from open play in the second half, and that could potentially be a culmination that hasn't been our approach, and maybe the emphasis hasn't been on that in training. But for me, I think we're definitely able to do it in parts of games. There's no reason why we can't.
If the emphasis needs to be on that in training, and I don't know if I'm misreading what you're saying, but that suggestion possibly that it hasn't been up to this stage, and like when you look ahead to the Northern Ireland and the Hungary Games, obviously in September, the expectation levels feel to be rising, but I mean, our inability to score goals or goals from play, it comes back to a point that you touched on earlier on about Vera Pauw, and the question is being asked, as you've said, whether she should stay on or not. When you put all that in the mixer, what is your net result? What was your answer to that question, I suppose, Sue, when you asked yourself, should Vera Pauw stay on?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know what goes on in training. I'm not involved in the camp. I mean, you hear whispers and you hear different things and stuff, but obviously, we train with the way we set ourselves up. I'm sure that's the way we train. I'm sure we obviously do, look at training the other end of the pitch as well. But I suppose when the emphasis has been on that deep defensive block, just within a game, the mindset, it might be a little bit difficult to change that when needed, or, at the flick of a switch, I guess. But I certainly think that's the next evolution for this team, to be able to change styles within a game. And that's certainly something that has evolved in the women's game in general over the years. The better teams are now able to change system within matches. They're not they're not ritual. They're not stuck to their 4-4-2 or their 4-3-3 or whatever. They're able to change system within a game, depending on whether they're winning or losing, or for blocks of matches if they want to go and chase a team. Going back to the question about Vera, if you're asking me what I think, I really don't know, I guess. I suppose you could look at it two ways. On one hand, you could say she got us to a World Cup. Does she deserve a new contract? We've seen it happen with other managers, Trapattoni, Mick McCarthy, maybe when we qualified for Euros. In rugby, it happens all the time, Joe Schmidt, etc. On the other hand, why have the FAI not offered her a contract now? Maybe you could say, were they focusing on the World Cup, or did they want to see how results went? Or is there something else that we don't know about? Like Vera's quite clearly said she wants to stay on, but there hasn't really been any word from the FAI yet. So maybe it's a waiting game. Maybe they're going to wait until she comes back. But I do think the team is ready to evolve. I do think we're ready to play a different style. As I said, I'm not saying attack for 90 minutes. You can't do that with these top teams, but we can certainly go toe to toe with them for periods of games and for phases of games. We've proven that we can do it.
Yeah, so do we get the best out of our team with the system that we play? Do we get the best out of Katie McCabe, her playing so deep, do you think?
Personally, I don't think so. And look, again, I will caveat all this by saying every coach is different. They all have their own style. They all have their own system, preferred style of play, their preferred system, their preferred players, etc. But for me, and this is my opinion, I feel some of our players are not playing in the correct position. And I've said it all along. I've said it like a year ago, 2 years ago. It's not just now. For me, Katie McCabe is better, more advanced, and we saw that second half of the game. It reminds me so much of Roy Keane against Holland, Richie Dunn in Moscow that time against Russia. Like she was like a one-woman show. She was dragging the team. She really wanted to affect the game in every way. She was trying to drag the team. She really led by example. I thought she was absolutely brilliant. For me, I think we get more out of her going in a more forward position. Denise O'Sullivan as well. Denise, I think, needs to be a little bit more advanced. I would also look at Megan Connolly. I think Megan Connolly, for me, again, her best position is in midfield. In actual fact, I think when Megan played underage with her underage national squad, she was the number 10 position. So she was even the advanced midfielder, not even the deep lying. But her game has evolved, in fairness. Now she's gone on and gotten more experience and played at club level. But for me, she's a 6. So she's your holding midfielder, and she can spray the ball around. She has a great, range of passing. She can protect that back four as well. But if you release her into midfield, that releases Denise a little bit further forward. We have two other excellent centre halves on the bench who've never let us down. Diane Caldwell, Claire Reardon really staked her claim. Unfortunately, we lost out with Aoife Mannion's injury. But yeah, that criticism has been levelled at Vera, that we're not getting the best out of the players because they're not all playing in the correct positions. I mean, Heather Payne was another one. For a long time, she played up front, and really Heather was really just a runner up front. She's not a goal scorer, and she knows that herself. Heather is better wide, either as a wing or the wing back. But look, again, going back to the point I made, also coaches have different opinions about teams, about players, but I definitely think, we can make some changes and the team can evolve, because we do have some really good players, and we have a whole lot of really good players that are not at the World Cup for different reasons, whether it was injury, left out, not experienced enough, but we have some fantastic players coming through, and I don't see why we can't qualify for the next Euros.
Yeah, and maybe if one of those players, Megan Campbell, was there, we might have seen Katie a bit further up the pitch. I'm sure that might be a point that maybe Vera Pauw would make afterwards when she's sitting down with the FA around all of this.
Absolutely. I think it was, and she was unfortunate with injuries to key players like Megan, Aoife. They'd have been in the team, and that potentially would have released them players into different positions, But and then you look back even further. Jessou got a bad injury, and she was Ellen Malloy. I mean, these are players that could potentially be in that squad and be in that starting 11. So we really have a huge amount of talent coming through, and I mean, it is an exciting time. It really is, and it's great they've got a taste of it now, and they're going to want more, and we're all going to want more. So yeah, I definitely think we can we can now start qualifying more regularly for major finals.
The Vera Pauw comments, the last one on Vera Pauw from me, but the comments before the last game about the defence and the slow, good players, but they're very slow, and she obviously made that publicly in the press conference, and then afterwards, particularly with Tony O'Donoghue after the game, she was very critical of certain positioning for the goals, I think particularly in relation to Anya Gorman maybe and Niamh Fahey. Is that just the cut and thrust of like managers' commentary in and around games, Sue, or did it raise an eyebrow for you?
Yeah, like she did deflect, I suppose, a little bit of the blame is too strong a word, I suppose, when she was asked. I suppose she did apportion blame to players, and again, I mean, Vera has said she's very direct. That's her style. That's the Dutch style. It is, I suppose. Managers are different. Some managers will deflect attention altogether, won't blame players at all in public, won't say anything critical, will do it in the dressing room. I suppose when players are hearing, the comment, whatever about criticising within a game and something that's gone wrong, and that can happen from time to time. And players weren't named as well either, in fairness to Vera. No. But I suppose when you're saying your defenders are too slow, or we haven't got enough attack and whatever, I mean that can sort of play on the mindset of players. It absolutely can. I've no doubt it can, and it can potentially affect them. So it's certainly not something I like to hear from a manager. But look, as I said, managers are different, cultures are different. Yeah, but it definitely can. It can play on the psyche, it can play on the mindset of players, maybe in bad moments within a game or shaky moments. We're under pressure in a match, and these things could be going through their minds. You just don't know.
Yeah, there's probably a sense of having their back as well. Like, you can be blunt, but maybe to them, or maybe in the dressing room, have that conversation rather than out to the media, because maybe that can send the wrong message to the team.
For sure. No, for sure. And again, as I said, that's different styles, and I would have never done that, and there's many other managers that wouldn't, but there's also managers that would. So, it's different styles, but then you have to see the individual as well. Some individuals, that probably wouldn't bother them. They'd take it on the chin, but then there are others that it potentially could affect them in a game. So that's a balancing act of a coach, I guess, of a manager. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
We used to lash Trapattoni out of it for all the time. We'd be like, how does he, why is he, it's fine to say it anyway. Let's see where all that goes over the next while. Just a last note on the Nigeria game then, Sue. What's your expectation around that? You mentioned at the very start that this is not a dead rubber. We need to go for it. We need to use it as a platform to kick on into the Nations League. What's your expectation around what you might do in a team selection?
I wouldn't make wholesale changes. I don't think she will, and I wouldn't either personally. I would freshen it up a little bit probably. As I mentioned, I would try and get Megan Connolly into midfield and bring in one of the other centre halves. That releases then Denise a little bit further forward, because Denise can be creative. While Denise is a fantastic player, we know she's a world-class player. For me, she hasn't quite been on her game in this World Cup, and potentially that injury maybe has impacted her a little bit more. But maybe having her in a more advanced role where she doesn't have as much defensive duties might, be better for her. We might get the best out of her. I'd also try and get Katie forward. I definitely would. Whether that means bringing in someone like Chloe Mustaki, who's never let us down. She's a natural fit. She has a great left foot, or playing Izzy in that position, whom Vera seems to prefer. But I would definitely somehow try to get Katie in a more advanced role. But I freshened up a little bit. I wouldn't make wholesale changes. Maybe later on in the game, give substitutes, longer chance to get a run at it if we need a change within the game. but it's not a dead rubber by any chance. I was very impressed with the Nigerians. They're so defensively organised from the very outset. I said any 2 teams out of the 4 could qualify. Unfortunately, now we can't, obviously, but another time we potentially could have. If obviously the results had gone better, we could have. But the performance was there in part in some of the games. But Nigeria are a very good team, and they were even able to leave their top scorer out, as you saw, Oshuela, and what a player she is. She forced the Australians to really rethink their defensive strategy when she came on and scored a cracking goal and really caused mayhem in the defence. So hopefully they leave her on the bench again. But they're a very good team. We're going to have our work cut out for us, as we knew all along. But I still don't think it's beyond us to get a result.
Yeah, all right. Well, look, you've been very measured over the last while. Let's see where we're at after the Nigeria game, and we'll chat to you again then. Thanks a million, Sue.
Thanks, Adrian. Thank you.
Cheers for that. It does worth bearing in mind that I was watching the aftermath of the game, and obviously Katie's in tears, and Denise O'Sullivan's very upset. Denise O'Sullivan's 29, should be around for another World Cup if we can qualify. Katie McCabe is 27, could be around for another 2 World Cups if we were to qualify. The point that Sue was making there about the positivity of the profile of the squad going forward, there's a lot. You have your Niamh Fahey's, Louise Quinn, Diane Caldwell, there's Owen O'Gorman, few of them, but a lot of reasons to think that that will be my view about the Nigeria game, as to there's no holding back here, no sampling for the future, none of that sort of stuff. Get out there and try and use it as a springboard into those games.
You play your best team. You absolutely play your best team. It's not a game to maybe just give a girls a run because it's the World Cup. And don't get me wrong, the girls on the bench are there for a reason. It was very tough to even make that squad in the first place. I'm sure that Vera will probably ring in the changes maybe a little bit earlier, but no, we should absolutely be going out to win the game. And just on the team as a whole, it's such a positive experience. The journey they've been on, the process in order to qualify for the World Cup was so difficult. It was unbelievably difficult that for them to get there in the first place, we can't forget how we all felt when they first qualified. It was incredible. And they've been there now. They've had good performances. They've been so unlucky. The first goal was a penalty. Marisha Shiva, unfortunate. The next goal was an own goal. Megan Connolly again slipped and it deflected in. I just think sometimes you don't get the rub of the green as well. I think they did so well, and hopefully against Nigeria now we can see a good performance. But we saw Nigeria against Australia yesterday, and they're 40th in the FIFA rankings. I wouldn't be reading into that at all.
It has meant very little at this tournament. Even though results have not always gone the way of the underdogs, it doesn't feel as if there's been major gaps between those teams.
No.
At your point about the Megan Connolly OG and the unfortunateness of it, it all factors in when you're considering whether Vera Pauw goes forward with this group. There were tiny margins that if they'd gone slightly differently, we wouldn't really be having this conversation. We'd be saying, she's a perfect fit, look what she's done with this World Cup. She's worked with the group that she has, which is the euphemism for managing the shortcomings or whatever. So
I think Vera has done really well. She's blunt in her approach, but maybe they needed a little bit of that. To really
I'd like
get
to
things.
see, like you hinted at, I'd like to see more of that internally. And sorry, I don't know what's going on internally. I'm sure she is as blunt internally. I'd like to see less of it. Maybe a bit rich coming from the likes of us sat here.
I know. Yeah, I'm always feel cautious of that too. It's a tough environment to be in, but I think taking players aside and in the dressing room and all of that thing, and
I got
keeping
your back
it internal.
out there,
Exactly. But it might just be her personality and the way she does things, and maybe she means no harm by it. She doesn't even fully realise it's just the Dutch way. I don't know, but
I think with everything else going on, obviously with her, that she should be acutely aware of that and in mind of that. Maybe it's an easy shaking of hands for the FAI and go, okay, listen, it's been great, thanks a million, and we'll see it on the track. That might feed into it. I suspect it may well do.
We have to take into account as well, emotions are high. They just got knocked out of the World Cup when she did that interview as well. So we probably
you're being very kind to her.
We're probably not even thinking about that too. I'd look at it that way, but do I think that she should continue? It's been a tough road for her at the minute. I do think maybe you'd love to know what the players are thinking, but they've gone through a lot with all of this too, and it's taken away from the football at times.
That's a good point, yeah.
But she's done really well with this group. I would never take that away from her. We got to a World Cup. We can't be forgetting that. But yeah, it's been a tough road, I would say, and I'd say one not easy for her and everything that she's had to go through, and then balancing a national team at the same time.
And who's coming in, of course, if she does leave. Right, during the ads you're going to hear from Emma Byrne, Karen Duggan and Kathleen McNamee. And the latest episode of the Coy Gig Pod, Emma will give her take on what was particularly impressive. She fell from the girls in green in the first half against Canada. The Coy Gig Pod and OTB in association with Cadbury, who are official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland women's national team. And after that, Ger Brennan, two-time All-Ireland winner, is going to give the Dubs perspective ahead of Sunday's matchup against Kerry.
OTB AM.
We're going to Australia. Surely.
No, there's no surely.
Screw you, accountants. You can't stop us now.
Off the ball.
Cheering on the girls in green.
Emma, what was it for you, or who was it for you in that first half that you were really impressed with?
Well, I just thought we defended the central areas so well. I think, the press was so good, which is really difficult to get right. And it's the first time I've seen us press excellently. Like, we just pressed from the centre, forced them out wide, and they just didn't know what to do, because I think their whole game plan was to play centrally, especially with Jess Fleming on the pitch. They wanted to get her on the ball, and we didn't allow that to happen.
I think they thought that our eights would go to the fullbacks, but our fullbacks took that on, which was brilliant to see.
Yeah,
and it was because the central players got their positioning so right.
Yeah, the fullbacks were higher for sure, but I just think that the pressing from Rusha, from Denise, from Sinead Farrelly and Lucy Quinn was absolutely spot on. And then, of course, we're going to talk about Ciara Carusa, who was, for me, absolutely brilliant in the first half. Like, she was just class. As soon as the ball went up, she put the fear of death into the two central defenders, and Gilles and Buchanan. Like, they did not want the ball, which was brilliant. And we just did everything right. When we got on the ball, we kept it. We passed really nice balls up into the spaces for Carusa to run onto. It was just a brilliant performance all around. My daughter agrees with me. Lolita is in total agreement. Yeah, it was just fantastic. The best defensive then transition of play I've seen from Ireland.
Yeah, I agree. I think that since our Finland away performance, I don't think I've seen us play on the front foot as well as that. And yeah, that was it. It was just front foot. Yeah, it was still defensive, but it was much higher up the pitch. Obviously, I was looking at ball retention stat, but we didn't exert as much energy as we had to in the Australia game. So that's why we were able to get up in support of Ciara when she did get the ball. And like Emma said, I think we could wax lyrical about her because she was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, we made the back four Canada look very, very average. They didn't know what to do. The whole talk at the start of the game, before the game, was all about Ashley Lawrence, Kate McKay, blah, blah, blah. Who cared? It didn't matter. We won that battle. We completely won that battle in terms of getting their defenders on the ball and allowing them to play.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
8:32 OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. As you've heard, we've loads to come on the show, but right now it is time to get stuck into Dublin Kerry on Sunday, and to do that, delighted to say we're joined on the line by two-time All-Ireland winner Ger Brennan. Good morning, Ger.
Good morning, Adrian. How's it going, Aoife? How are you doing?
How are you keeping?
Not too bad. Now yourselves?
All good. We'd Michael Darragh-Macaulay on the show with Will last night, and he was threatening to boot Stephen Cluxton out of the retired players WhatsApp group yesterday evening. Has he delivered?
Would you believe I actually was on the road last night, Adrian, and I was listening to it, and I haven't logged into the group to check, but I will have a look here. I'll let you know, but I hope he has.
If you want to do that at any point during the chat and bring us the breaking news, we're happy to do that.
Yeah, I can do that for you.
You played your full career with Cluxton, obviously, and he was already even well established, I think, when you came into it, but there's a lot made, obviously, about his impact this year. Did they get to the final, but would they have gotten to the final this year without him?
It's a fair question. Obviously Dublin have two very good keepers as understudies in Evan Comerford and David O'Hanlon. Obviously with Stephen gone since last season, Adrian, and most of the league this year, I thought David O'Hanlon did particularly well. I thought when Stephen turned up, warming up for that, was it the league semi-final or the league final? He was the first that anyone knew that he was going to be back in the panel. I actually thought David O'Hanlon had a great game that time in goals, which was testament to his character, that he didn't falter or become overly nervous, that the main man was back in town and was going to put a squeeze on him. So with that performance, I was surprised to see that Stephen got back in so early. But at the same time, you know, if you're coming back to play and given what Stephen has won, you know, you're not coming back to be sitting on the bench. You're not coming back to sulk either. If you're not getting a run, you're coming back to put your shoulder to the wheel to try to improve the group and try to win back your position, which obviously he was able to do. So would we have gotten to a final without him? Possibly. Did we improve our chances of getting there with him? We did.
Aisling and myself were talking about earlier on about the drive to 9 and the 3 players that are going for it, and I'm slightly putting the cart before the horse here, but humour me if you will. Will he go again, do you think? Is this the last hurrah for him, or could we see him again next year?
Like, if you're on the outside looking in, Adrian, and I suppose one thing, former players, we never torment or ever ask some of the current players that we played with how's things going inside, because they're the type of questions that current players hate. So you're always respectful of those lads who are still playing that you would have soldiered with in the past. So none of us have asked him, but from the outside looking in and from where you guys are sitting, it would suggest that bringing Stephen back in, Jack McCaffrey coming back, Paul Mannion coming back, Pat Gearóid getting involved, it would suggest there's one last push here from Desi and his management team, and that a couple of guys may step away at the end of the year. What's interesting with the split season, Adrian Aisling, is that lads will go back to the club, they'll play away, they'll get a couple of months out of that depending on how well the club goes, and then, you know, it's 6 months until you play your next inter-county game. So maybe after the final, or even other teams that have been knocked out in the semis or the quarters recently, fellas who have a few miles in the clock, they're probably thinking, Genie Mac, I'm tired of this, I need a break. But then all of a sudden you're probably advised, listen, leave it alone, get the club campaign under your belt, and then see how the legs are come Christmas time, and then you could go at it again, you know. But it's hard to tell. But it would suggest that there could be an exodus of lads after the game on Sunday.
And if that is the case, Ger, where does that leave Dublin then?
I think it leaves us in a rocky-ish place, Aisling, to be fair. I think Desi has done his utmost to try to integrate a lot of the newer lads and put his slant on the team, but he probably has gone back to some of the tried and tested. Lee Gannon has certainly been one of those guys that Desi's introduced, and he's certainly up to it, senior county level. I think he's stepped on again this year. I think Colin Basquel has been knocking around a few years. He's had one or two wonderful performances, obviously. Most notably Mayo, he was better marked against Monaghan, so he'll have another opportunity to prove himself on Friday. If Tom Lahiff has also been given a run, but like we've been very fortunate, Aisling, myself as a player, to have played part of my career with some of these great names that are taken to the field tomorrow. And again, you guys, you're obviously me, Lady, and Adrian, you're Dobia.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yes,
end this interview straight away. Westmeath.
Oh, Westmeath, sorry, yeah. So you two have a good bit of banter with each other in there, but good win from Westmeath a few years ago.
We don't even talk about it.
We've all been treated to one of the most talented group of players ever, in the same way that you're probably speaking about some of the Limerick players there too, in the hurling. You know, the likes of Paul Mannion, Jack McCaffrey, Conor O'Callaghan. Look, at the list goes on. It's going to be very hard to replicate those guys. Are they there in Dublin? They're not at the moment. Will they be? Who knows? It'll come down to a bit of luck. In fairness to the county board, over the last number of years, the structures are there. There's a lot of committed people in the county board and in clubs trying to, from a participation point of view, first and foremost, to attract kids away from soccer or rugby or other sports, particularly when they hit the later teens. And so there is a mountain of work being done to retain players, which obviously does give you a chance if you have more numbers, you know.
It does. The word, nobody has mentioned this word in relation to Dublin in the last sort of 15 years, I don't think, but it does feel like we're headed into a transition period, it must be said.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the papers writing up, it's covered in a lot of the back pages this morning about Dub's best ever is one that just so happens to be here in front of me here on the mirror. It's in most of the papers, and it's Desi getting a little bit emotional about James McCarthy and what he's brought to the Dub setup. He best ever, he said, and there wasn't a caveat about it. Do you go with that?
If you look at James' overall contribution throughout his career, and obviously going for 9 All-Irelands, like James having a bad game is a 7 out of 10. So consistently over his career, James has had the greatest impact on this Dublin team as an outfield player. And then you'd have to put Stephen Cluxton in that bracket with him then in the goals. But James is just overall contribution. He just rarely put the foot wrong. And even there's been a couple of games this year, moments within games, and even I've seen him go 30, 35 minutes where the game has probably gone away from him a bit, and you'd be probably watching saying maybe this is the end for James, and then all of a sudden he comes out at half time, or he goes up and wins a great ball and he's driving forward, he turns the opposition and the momentum and the tide turns, and all of a sudden Dublin might kick 1-2 or 3 or 4 points unanswered, and that's the game over. And that's what James brings. So I would fully agree with Desi's assessment there of James's contribution to Dublin over the last 10 years and longer.
Yeah, he's been incredible this year, like the form that he's been in, and maybe the midfield battle. This is where the game could be won and lost. You know, Dermot O'Connor, Jack Barry, and then Brian Fenton and James. You know, it's incredible. Yeah. The four midfielders, probably 4 of the best in the game.
Yeah, well, on Jack Barry and Brian Fenton, Aisling, it's probably been well noted at this stage. Jack is one of the few lads that's managed to curb Brian Fenton's influence in some of the previous meetings. So no doubt he'll be detailed to pick up Brian again and to take him out of the game. Jack is more notably a spoiler. He would have attended UCD where I'm working, and I've been fortunate to see him grow and develop. But he's extremely athletic, very dogged, never gives up, gives in. And I think the challenge is going to be to Brian Fenton that this is one of these players that you haven't been able to shake off, and that's the challenge to you going into the game on Sunday. Can you shake off this guy and dominate him? I think in Dermot O'Connor, I think he's been very impressive at midfield. He's usually dynamic. I've seen him play with the colleges. He doesn't seem to get overawed by who he's marking. I think maybe emotionally he probably reacted a small bit the last day, getting the black card against Kerry, and maybe with experience he probably avoids such ill-advised or poor decisions to kind of allow himself to be put in that position, to be put off. But he is all the athleticism Dermot of James McCarthy too. And I think it's going to be a huge and very exciting battle to see those 4 lads go at it. And it's hard to call it. You would say the scale is probably way in favour of Dublin, just given what Brian Fenton and James McCarthy have achieved to date. But they're going to be faced with 2 hungry individuals, with Jack Barry and Dermot O'Connor.
We had Anthony Miles in studio during the week, and he was talking about it sort of stood out because it almost felt like it was rare an endorsement of Desi and what he's been doing. And he was talking about like he feels as if the players are bought in a little bit more to the message over the last year, maybe that they weren't in a way before that. What's the WhatsApp group take on Desi Farrell?
Well, I a lot of the lads in the WhatsApp group would have played with Desi. Desi has managed a lot of the lads who have retired at minor and under 21, and a few of the senior guys, Adrian, who have stepped away. And Desi's work as CEO and one of the co-founders of the Gaelic Players Association. So everyone in Dublin has an incredible amount of time for Desi. Desi has done incredible things on and off the field for players and continues to do it. And I can vouch for that personally through my engagement with the GPA and the support they would have put in place for me when I was kind of transitioning out of towards the end of my career into employment and whatnot. So there's a huge respect there for him, Adrian. From my point of view, any man no more than Derek Lane taking over. Because Kenny, if you take over after a great manager, it says a lot about the character of that individual. You know, you look at poor old Anthony Moyles. Did he get a 6-year term after Alex Ferguson? He lasted 9 months. But you look at what Desi has done, coming in after one of the greatest managers ever, in Jim Gavin, 6 All-Irelands in 7 years under Jim. And to be able to win in the first year, yes, is there a carryover from Jim's influence on that group? Definitely there is. But then there's been 2 kind of barren years, some good, some bad, some ugly. But you can see Desi, in his humility, he has reached out for support from some of the previous greats that have been involved. And, you know, look at Pat Gilroy's involvement, look at Stephen Cluxton come back in. And then obviously Jack and Paul Mannion coming in. Jack and Paul would have been on Desi's minor team in 2011 that lost against Tipperary in that minor final before we bet Kerry that time, and those lads are coming back to him because they're so loyal to him, you know. So there's a huge amount of respect around the county for Desi.
He's the most overqualified water boy that has ever existed. You obviously have played under him. What is Pat Gilroy bringing to the mix?
Well, there's no nonsense with Pat. Adrian, and again, as you said, lucky to have played with Pat. He you know what, I guess St. Vincent's, the culture we would have been brought up in has carried through, I think, to the Dublin team in a lot of ways. You know, there's no feeling sorry for yourself. You know, get on with it. And particularly in the world that we probably live in, Adrian, where certainly post-COVID, and again, I won't go down the path too much here because could be here all day. This sense of I want what I want and I want it now, or poor me, I'm playing inter-county, it's so hard, I have to travel here and travel there, and it's so difficult, and I'm missing out on this, I'm missing out on that. With Pat Gilroy and Desi and even Stephen Cluxton come back in, like, what they will be saying is that you have the gifts and the talents to be playing senior inter-county football, to be representing your parish and your club by putting on that county jersey. You're lucky to stop giving out, and if you keep giving out, you can feck off, and that's what Pat would bring. So it's just, there's no nonsense, no feeling sorry for yourself, just get on with it and do the job. From an advisory point of view, I would say he's probably invaluable to Desi Farrell, particularly this year, and I would imagine, and again, I wouldn't ask Pat to respect him because he is involved, but I would imagine he would have had a hand in getting some of those guys back in, and particularly Stephen Cluxton. Pat and Stephen would be quite close.
I think that says a lot about Desi's character, being able to ask for the help from, you know, the likes of Pat and bringing back Stephen Cluxton. Who do you think will pick up David Clifford, and how do Dublin curb his influence in the game?
Yeah, it's a great question, Aisling, and the obvious candidate would be Michael Fitzsimons to go pick up Clifford. Fitzy has marked David before. He is a great athlete himself. Fitzy, his ability to, he's one of the most awkward fellas, Aisling. If he's marking you, he's not necessarily pulling and dragging or swinging digs, but he's just always hitting you the whole time. And I think he probably learned a good bit from playing beside Rory O'Carroll from Kilmacud Cross, because Rory used to be at that as well. Just using your body to obstruct the opponent before the ball is coming in, and even when the ball is in the air, being able to use your backside, elbows, whatever it needs to be to put the individual off. So that's what Fitzy will bring. Now, the other thing that he will bring, which I think is hugely important, is his composure. He knows that David Clifford's going to probably score 4 or 5 points. He's going to set up a goal. He might get a goal. Fitzy won't panic. He won't go into a shell. There'll be a level of acceptance that he's marked one of the best footballers of all time, and that this guy is going to do damage. It's just trying to limit that damage as best as possible while he has the ball in his hand. The support that Fitzy gets then is going to be huge, and Brian Howard is probably, I think, if Stephen O'Brien, looking at the Kerry team that was named there, if Stephen O'Brien is going to come in and start in place of Adrian Spillane, I think that's another headache for the Dublin management to decide in terms of the matchups. But more likely, Brian Howard would be your man that will kind of hold the fort and give Fitzy a hand in trying to double up on Clifford. And then thirdly, the press out the fields, I think, is important. There's obviously a blood connection between Paddy and David, and I would actually say that if you can get into Paddy Clifford's head, I think it does lessen the supply that goes into his brother, and I think Dublin put a huge squeeze on him, and it probably, I think, a Lee Gannon or maybe an Owen Merchant might be best suited to him to try and take him out of the game as much as possible. So they'd be your three things. Aisling, a level of acceptance in that you're marking the best fella ever, and Fitzy will, if you can break even with him, that's huge. And then the support coming in with a Brian Howard on breaking ball or trying to double up in the tackle, and then couple them with the press further out the field, and particularly his brother, if he can take the sting out of his brother. I thought Stephen O'Brien actually did particularly well when he came in at half time in the semi-final. He really got Kerry on the front foot, which brought Sean O'Shea into the game as well. He obviously had a huge second half last week, so Stephen O'Brien will take a lot of mind too. He's very direct. I love watching him play.
Yeah, changed the game for them. And you were saying Dubs by a couple.
I think 3 or 4 points. Adrian, I think just again on the line, the guys that are going to come in for Dublin, we just have a bit more to offer. I think with Killian Spillane, sorry, which Spillane is it? Adrian, is back. From injury on the bench, yeah. They'll have a bit more firepower coming in. But from Kerry going into the weekend, but I think overall Dublin, they just have too much, I think, and you're looking probably a draw match to the latter stages of the game, and maybe 3 or 4 or 5 points of a flurry that should get Dublin over the line. You see what Dublin did to Monaghan in the semi-final. There's only a couple of points in it, I think, on 63 or 64 minutes. You see what Kerry then did to Derry. They were 2 points down, and then I think they scored maybe 5 unanswered points, and all of a sudden the game is over. So Kerry are capable of doing that, but on this occasion I think Dublin might have a bit too much. Now in saying that, Kerry have bet Dublin. This Kerry group have bet Dublin, Adrian, obviously 2 years ago in the semi-final, so they got that monkey off the back. The challenge, if you're in Kerry shoes, and I'm conscious of a Dublin bias here, right? But you don't have any Kerry person on with me to challenge me. But if I was a Kerry man, I think the challenge would be in order to become really recognised in Kerry, you have to do back-to-backs. You have to be able to win one All-Ireland after another, because that's what's been done by their predecessors. And looking at Jack O'Connor's record as well, I think that's something he hasn't been able to achieve yet in his terms as Kerry manager, and I think that'll be something that he'll be keen to push and impress upon the lads. So that'll be the challenge for Kerry. If you do want to become a great player, or do you want to be just remembered as the one in a row team, which won't carry too much weight down in Kerry.
That's for sure. We'll enjoy it. Thanks million for that, Ger. Catch up with you down the line.
Thanks, Agency Aisling.
Thanks, Ger.
Cheers, Ger Brennan there. Yeah, I don't know. Like a lot of interesting matchups, which when the first 5 minutes is going to be interesting just to see exactly who's picking up.
I thought it was very interesting when he said there about Paddy Clifford, and then if he maybe got into his head, he'll stop the supply to David,
which feels more possible.
Yeah,
doesn't it? Like the possibility of having a Clifford with a mic in his hand after winning in Ireland at Croke Park, I must say, is like it's willing me to. I watched that again last night.
Paddy. His speech. Yeah.
And fair play to the officials. How they wrongly sent me off, I don't know how they sent me. Anyway, look, they had a great game as they're like trucking off the pitch.
I know.
One of the all-time great moments.
It really was, yeah. I was there that day. That was such a tough game because I think it was 5 red cards in the end.
But it was on
air.
They all
I missed a red card on air.
Did you? Okay, yeah.
I was like, how many red cards? And I was like, 4. And then someone beside me was like, 5. It's like, what? Where's the 5th?
I remember watching it. It was mad.
Yeah, it was all right near the end.
Yeah. Right. We will. By the way, he mentioned about balancing the narrative there. Paul Galvin was at the Football Pod show Croke Park last night, so that very much tick that box, and if people want to catch that, it'll be available for your delectation very shortly. And also Shane Hannon is in the kingdom as we speak and will be joining us in a little bit to bring the green and gold side of proceedings as well. So all that to come. It's coming up on 9 o'clock. Good morning to you, wherever it is you're at. You're watching OTB AM, which is the sports breakfast show from Off the Ball. There's loads of comments coming into us, and we'll come back to those in just a little bit. But before all of that, time for something a little bit different. We are turning to surfing. Gearóid McDaid is a professional surfer from Sligo. He finished second in the shortboard grand final at the European Championships in Portugal, EuroSurf 2023 this week. Delighted to say joins us on the line. Good morning, Gearóid, and congrats.
Morning, thank you. How are you all doing?
How are you doing? More to the point.
Yeah, good. Super happy. Still here in Portugal, waking up after the finals day yesterday. Pretty tired and sore, but yeah, super happy.
Do you get a chance to get out and celebrate that last night, or what's the scene?
We tried my best to go out and celebrate, and had a couple of beers, but that was about the max of it. I was so dead from a full day of contests, of heats yesterday, so I was in bed by 9:30, so the celebrations were finished early.
How long are you in the water on a day like that?
So yesterday the heats were like 30-minute long, so I had 2 heats, so I had 2 30-minute heats. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's pretty high intensity, so you're pretty fried after every heat.
You mentioned sort of about the body taking a bit of a battering. How does that come about? Because like from the outside looking in, and I'm certainly not claiming to be any expert in the area, but the bits and pieces I've seen, like it all looks so slick and designed and carefree and all that sort of stuff. So will you take us inside the waves a little bit, and how does that battering take place?
Oh, it's well, you're getting battered every time you're paddling out. Even you have to get through the waves. That's the first hurdle you have to get past, and then you're surfing on the waves. It's pretty physically demanding. It probably might not look like it, but it's super hard. And then when you fall, you're getting some hold downs and stuff, and yeah, it's hard, but it's good crack.
And how did it all begin for you, Ger? You might take us back to how it all started.
So yeah, I started surfing probably when I was 10 properly, but my dad got me into it like every summer. We'd go out once or twice to Strand Hill, and he'd be pushing me in from when I was like probably 5 or 6, I'd say, once or twice every summer. And then kind of from when I was 10 years old onwards, I just kind of fully clicked into it and pretty much quit every other sport, and I knew that this was the one thing I wanted to do all the time. So it took up most of my time, and that's kind of how it's been going ever since. Pretty much only thing I do now.
And you're a pro surfer. Like, how many pro surfers are there in Ireland?
There's 1 or 2 other guys that are pro surfers in Ireland, I suppose. Like there's guys like Conor Maguire, who's a big wave surfer, who's made a career out of it as well. So yeah, it's good to have some other guys like that we surf with all the time, and yeah, pushes you in all the different types of conditions.
We'd be very familiar with talking to like golfers, who get into it, and it's like it's that same nature of sort of you're going from venue to venue, week on week, and trying to scrape together whatever money you can, and winnings and sponsorships and all that sort of stuff. What is that like, Gearóid, for you? Is it a comfortable living? Is it a scrape by? Or how do you manage that?
Yeah, so it is. It's pretty much the same as that. It's scraping every cent you can get together to get to some contests, to chase waves around the world. You're just you're trying to just scrape as much as you can together to make a living out of it. And I've been lucky. I have good sponsors at the moment, and it's keeping me going for now, and keeping me off the workforce. So I'm super happy and super lucky that I'm able to do it.
Is there what's you don't need to go into specifics if you don't want, but what's the payday like after a day like yesterday?
Oh, well, to be honest, there's no payday after a day like yesterday. It's just the European Championships, so okay. There's no prize money in that. It's just the European title, and there's no, a lot of the contests, they're like more the pro contests, there would be money in and stuff, but for this one you're just,
it's the glory,
doing it for the glory of European Championships. And happy that I came second. Would have loved to have the glory of first, but it's all good.
Take the opportunity there to give your sponsors a shout out. Who are you working with?
I got like Rip Curl, Monster Energy, Bradley Surfboards, get support from Sport NI and Irish Surfing Association. They all support me. My whole family support me, so yeah, it's great. I can't beat it.
Yeah, it must be incredible to be able to represent your country as well in a sport that maybe isn't as well known here at home.
Yeah, that's it. It's kind of, right now, surfing is getting more and more into the mainstream light. So it's in the Olympics now and all that. So hopefully it gets more and more mainstream recognition, and it grows the sport greatly, and can have access to more money and help the younger generation come along and make more pro surfers from Ireland, and just grow the sport.
You mentioned a little bit earlier there about the fine line between the silver and the gold. Did you catch a bad break with the swell in the end?
No, like I had some good waves, and I was super close. Like I needed 6.5 and I got a 6.37. So it's kind of down to personal opinion and human discretion in judging. So it was right there, the score I needed, and I felt like I did pretty well and thought I had the score. But it's how it goes. Sometimes you can't control what everyone else thinks.
You can't allow for bad taste, is what you're saying.
Yeah. That's the way it all is. It's you never know. Some people prefer one thing, some people prefer another. So you never know how it's going to go. But I was pretty happy with how I surfed in the final and had good scores, and I was happy.
You mentioned the Olympics there, Gearóid. Is that the hope, the dream for 2024?
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of my main goal now for the next year, is get into my training, and the next qualifier for that is in Puerto Rico in February. So that's my main goal, is to try and qualify for the Olympics for next year. It's in Tahiti, so it's on a really good wave, and a wave that I'd love to be able to go surf. So that's a huge goal of mine right now. Yeah.
Is there a bit of sniffiness from the surf community about the Olympics? 'Cause there was certainly a time ago.
A bit of what?
Like that the surf community were not quite bought into the Olympic spirit.
I don't know. It depends. There's like kind of a lot of different sides to surfing. People who like it, who just want it to be like the lifestyle thing and all that, and they don't really like competitions and stuff. So they might have been like, oh, we want it to be old school surfing and stuff. But I mean, most of the people are stoked that it's in the Olympics and it's getting more mainstream recognition, and it's meaning it's just going to grow the sport everywhere, all around the world, and just to help the future generations and everything. And I think it's amazing, and everyone else I know thinks it's amazing, but for sure there's definitely some haters out there, I'd say.
So are you, like you mentioned about the travel nature of things, you've mentioned several exotic destinations already in the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes. What are you, is Sligo then the base that you continue to come back to in between times, or how do you manage that?
Yeah, for sure. I live in Strandhill in Sligo right now, so every time I come home, I'm always hoping for good waves. I mean, there's not really anywhere else in the world that has as good waves as Ireland. So during the summer, I try travel a lot because it gets kind of small and flat at home. And then kind of come winter, I try and stay home as much as possible to get the winter swells to surf some of the amazing waves we have. I've travelled all over the world, and I still haven't found anywhere as good as Ireland, to be honest.
That's incredible.
Yeah. What does a week look like for you, Gearóid? Obviously, you're out in the water, but what else does a pro surfer do? Do you do gym? Is nutrition? Does all of that stuff come into it as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the last couple of years, I've started getting a lot more and more into my physical fitness and nutrition, and it definitely is making a big difference. You kind of have to keep up with the game at the moment. Everybody else in the world is really on top of their fitness and stuff. So it's definitely, everyone's becoming proper athletes now in surfing. So it's definitely something you have to stay on top of.
And the National Surf Centre opening up on your doorstep last month, does that impact you?
I haven't. Yeah, it's really good. It's a super cool building and stuff there. So hopefully that'll help surfing in the local community and help grow it and help us all to improve our surfing with a facility like that there. It's great.
Well, listen, will you jump on with us again down the line when you qualify for the Olympics and you go out there and win a medal as well?
Definitely, yeah, that's the plan. I'll definitely be back on when I qualify for the Olympics, and frothing to give that a try, and if it came off, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, well, listen, well done yesterday. Congrats, that's an amazing achievement, and thanks a million for jumping on this morning.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on. Cheers.
Not at all. That's pro surfer Gearóid McDaid there after success at the EuroSurf 2023 in Portugal yesterday, silver medal. Quite the achievement. Loads of comments still coming into us this morning on YouTube and elsewhere as well, and we'll come back to those as we work through the morning. We're with you until 10. We're going to be talking to Matt Williams just a little bit about the latest state of play in the rugby championships. We head into it's curtailed one, of course, with the World Cup in mind. We're heading into the final round of games tomorrow, so we'll get Matt's thoughts on that in just a little bit. But in the meantime, by the way, as we head into our next item about more preview the Dublin Kerry game, a reminder that you can win a couple of tickets for the game. Yes, they are available, and if you check out our social handles, you will get all the details on that. The post is up there. Pretty sure it's still live, he says, frantically searching to see. There's people replying with who they think is going to win the game, and that's your mechanic to win. So just check out Off the Ball on Twitter, and it's all with thanks to AIB as well, so go on up there and check that out. Shane Hannon from the wilds of the kingdom, good morning to you.
Adrian and Aisling, good morning. How are things?
Good morning, Shane. What is it like there?
We're flying. We're at the Ha-Ha roundabout. Don't know why it's called, I don't even know if it's a roundabout, but it's called the Ha-Ha. It's where the tourists pick up the horse and cart.
Oh, yeah.
Get their little,
the Jarvies.
Got one. Yeah, exactly. There's one horse and cart still behind me. There was about 4 a minute ago, so I was cursing the American tourists there, taking them away from me for my lovely background shot here. But still one left. I was hoping for more equestrian action, but still looks pretty nice. You've got the Killarney Avenue Hotel. I would have shown you the mountains in the background, but there's a bit of mist down in Killarney this morning above the mountains, so I gave you as good a shot as I could.
More equestrian action.
Yes, basically. So I was in, you were speaking of tickets there, and I was in Tatler Jack's on Plunkett Street last night for a pint after me travelling about the kingdom, and it was a little bit emotional. There was a Dublin fan with his wife sitting at the bar. He obviously knew the owner of the pub. Tatler Jack's is actually a pub owned by the Kerry County Board Chairman. And basically he had a ticket for somewhere else way up in the gods, the nosebleeds in Croke Park for Sunday, and the Kerry fan behind the bar swapped him for the Hill 16 ticket that he had. This Dublin fan was absolutely screaming out for a Hill 16 ticket, and he happened to just drop it into conversation, and all of a sudden the barman pulls out a Hill 16 ticket for him, and I was like, the guy was literally, he came round the bar to give him a hug and thank him and stuff, so it was quite nice. The little mixture of the Kerry and Dublin fans, they're all getting along in the days leading up to it, I guess, guys.
Well, funny you should mention that, because Dylan Prendergast on YouTube earlier on, Shane Hannon spotted late in Killarney last night looking jolly. I mean, the jolly, I'm assuming, was not looking delighted with life. I'm sure
you can't do it,
saying that you were half cut.
See, I had 1 pint last night, so you can get away with nothing. You can get away with absolutely nothing. I was absolutely wrecked. I went down to Farn 4 early yesterday, and the Fireys area, that whole area, and then had an unbelievable drive out through Anniscall, through Dingle, out towards Ventry. We'll get to the clip. I was chatting to Gearóid McDaid out there yesterday, but it's an unbelievable trip. Kerry is such a beautiful county. I think that's hardly breaking news this morning, but the confidence in the kingdom is pretty high, I have to say. It was similar in Dublin, chatting to Charlie Redmond and the lads during the week, but I did get chatting to a few people, guys. I was, of course, during the week chatting to Dublin Jerry, renowned Dublin fan who wears the suit and the hat and all the rest of the matches. But I was just driving along the road, near enough to Farn 4, and this young red-headed lad with a beard was sticking out his thumb, hitchhiking, wearing a Kerry jersey, of course. And I said, Jesus, I'll give that lad a lift. And sure enough, takes me to his house. Lovely hospitality, breakfast, the whole lot. Lovely lad, wants a career in broadcasting, and to be honest, he's got the knack for it. He can fairly well speak. So we sat down in his back garden. So I think the first clip we have is of him, and we were talking about how he went to travel to South America. He's now home, and I guess he's timed his return perfectly to coincide with the All-Ireland final. Have a look.
You were telling me there before we started on air that you flew home yesterday. So were you travelling or what was the crack? How long were you away for?
I was away for a year thereabouts. Actually, as it turns out, the more I've read about this Kerry GAA thing, it turns out that actually they are All Ireland champions, and they won this championship last year. So it's funny actually, that just coincided with my departure, and my return coincidentally seems to have happened right on time for this game this weekend. So obviously there's some sort of external extraterrestrial force at play here that has dictated that my time away on the other side of the world has exactly happened at this juncture.
It worked out well, and you obviously you'll be aware of the Kerry stereotype, the cute kind of Kerry fan that plays down chances. You booked your flight home, I noticed, for after the semi-final and for before the final. So I'm guessing this isn't a coincidence.
Well, I mean, it is a coincidence. It's a pure coincidence. It's these things just tend to happen. I'm very, very fortunate that Kerry versus Dublin is happening this weekend. There was absolutely no planning whatsoever done when I happened to be booking these flights back in February, March. Pure coincidence that Kerry happened to be playing this weekend.
Listen, if there was ever two like-minded souls to randomly encounter each other in the back roads of Kerry.
Yeah, his name was Owen. He was very nice, I have to say. His mother Carmen put up a lovely feed for me when I landed in Kerry as well, and a cup of tea in the
breakfast.
Kitchen. It was very breakfast, a whole lot.
Go on.
I mean, like a spread and a half.
Go on.
They sorted me right out.
Give us the details.
The full details of the breakfast.
Yeah,
You're talking toast, sausage, bacon, tomato, egg, tea, coffee, orange juice. Like, you name it, it was laid out in a plate, and a bit of white pudding as well, I think.
I often wonder what the tomatoes doing in that mix.
I met
fish out of water, like.
I met Owen's family when we did a show down in Tralee, and they're mad Kerry supporters.
Shocked to hear that, Aisling. Shocked.
Absolutely shocked. Where did he get it from?
I know. They have a big mosaic in the living room, and it's loads of photos. Must be 70, 80 photographs on it. And I made the wall. I am in a photo with Owen before the All-Ireland final in my Galway jersey last year, and he's in his Kerry top in Dublin. Ger's on the wall as well. Remember when the whole family popped on to surprise Owen last year before he headed off, so that little screenshot is on there as well. So they're absolutely obsessed.
Myself and Aisling are not on the wall, is what you're telling us.
Well, you might have been. I didn't look hard enough. My ego was only looking out for myself, obviously. Not yet.
He's supposed to be coming back here in September, but
maybe not now.
The Dublin team is in, by the way, and we should bring it to our viewers this morning. It's kind of as you'd expect, and as Aisling has been pointed out during the Owen clip there, who knows who actually starts, but the team that was named: Stephen Cluxton in goal, Merchant, Fitzsimons and David Byrne across the full back line, James McCarthy, John Small and Lee Gannon. You have Fenton and Howard in midfield, you have Paddy Small, Paul Mannion and Niall Scully across the half forwards, Cormac Costello, Con and Pascal in the full forward line, all of which means Sean Bugler is on the bench, as is Kilkenny, McCaffrey, Dean Rock. So sort of as you'd expect, really.
Yeah, other than you'd expect to see Kieran Kilkenny start.
Yeah.
Game like this.
Yeah.
I think he is.
Who does he come in for in that mix? Because
I know.
Pascal.
And who do you drop out?
I don't think Pascal is going anywhere after what he did. He had obviously had a quiet game the last day, but after what he did in the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
You'd be shocked if that was the team, though, guys, wouldn't you? I mean, surely before the All-Ireland final, there's going to be a few little mind games. You'd imagine that's not the Dublin team that starts.
No, I'd be very shocked if we don't see Kenny start.
Yeah. We will. We'll see how all that pans out. Right. So what? Because the camera was making the point at the top of the show here, Shane, that the build-up has been quiet. Is it? Have you that sense down there? A
little bit funny. I was chatting to Ambrose O'Donovan yesterday, the former Kerry captain, and he was kind of making that point that there's not as much bunting and flags up around Killarney as maybe you'd have thought. I mean, there's quite a bit, I have to say, on the main streets, but certainly around me here in one of the main areas, there's not that much. There's definitely Kerry fever in the pubs. There's a lot of jerseys walking around the streets, and you can tell that people are excited, and especially because it's a Dublin Kerry final as well. I think it just adds to the mystique. But yeah, it's maybe not the build up down here that you'd have thought. There's also the issue, and I spoke to different people about this, the cost. It's the first time in a long time in All Ireland final you've Kerry fans talking about the cost of accommodation in Dublin, even getting up to Dublin. And for that reason, many people aren't probably heading up the road. I know there's still a massive demand for tickets, as we said, but yeah, I think a lot of people are maybe turning their nose up at it. But I did get to travel through little villages and towns yesterday. I'm a big fan of Tom Crean, the great Kerry legend, the Antarctic explorer. I think a couple of years ago, Micheál Murray-Hertig was on with the lads doing his Mount Rushmore with Ger and Owen, and he spoke poetically about the adventures of Tom Crean for quite some time. And I was passing through his home village of Annascaul yesterday, the famous South Pole Inn that a lot of people will be familiar with, and stopped in to chat to the owner, Gary Percival, just to talk about the exploits and I guess where he ranks in the list of all-time Kerry greats. Have a look.
I remember reading the great Dublin footballer Brian Mullins talking before about how Tom Crean was his hero and all he wanted to do was read up and hear the stories. And I guess this week of all weeks we remember all the great Kerry footballers of old. But I mean, where does Tom Crean rank in terms of the greatest Kerry people of all time? Surely, given the story that we've heard in the 35-mile trek, as you say, he's up there.
He has to be, really. But more than that is that he didn't boast about it. He knew what he'd done. People knew what he'd done, but he didn't talk about it. He wasn't, big-headed or anything like that. He was just loved by people, as far as I can work out. There was thousands of people turned up for his funeral and things like that. So it was just like, he must have been a character, and I would have loved to have met him. Yeah.
There are plenty of bits and bobs, even looking around the pub here. I mean, you have so many pieces of memory. I wonder if I can turn that around just slightly to show people a taster of some of the things you've got. Like, has it been a decades-long process to get these bits and bobs of Tom Crean, I guess, memorabilia?
Yes, it has, of course. Yeah, most of the photos on the wall come from the Scots Polar Research Institute in Cambridge. We have some from the National Geographic. They're from the original slides. So, I mean, they preserve the memory of what the men did and things like that, as well as reading the books. The pictures are very good for teaching the children. They understand. We can all say it was cold, but how cold it was is hard to imagine, really, isn't it? So,
I remember you saying before in an interview, I think you were talking about the types of people that come into the pub. There's maybe three types of people. So maybe tell us what those three types are.
There's people who see the name of the pub, come in, South Polling, wonder what that place is, and then they come in and learn about Tom Crean. Then you've got people that know a little bit about Tom Crean, or they're from Ireland, or they've heard something, and they've learned, their children are learning it and things like that. And then the third one's what I call the frozen beards, would be all the people that go to the Antarctic, who've been down there, who've experienced things and know the hardship that these men must have gone through, and just want to come and pay homage, really, to the man that was, and the person that, and the little village in Kerry that Tom Crean came back to. So yeah.
Did you talk to anybody about the football at all?
I did. I was obviously busy talking about explorers and Antarctic adventures and that sort of thing in Enniscall. But there are two interviews I'd encourage people to check out on YouTube later on this morning and podcast as well. So Ambrose O'Donovan and Tim Moynihan, like two Radio Kerry greats. They've become almost the Ant and Deck of sports broadcasting down in Kerry. They're brilliant. Their colour commentary is amazing at the matches. Ashton, you'll be familiar with them from
I sat beside them the last day. Something else.
They're gas.
Incredible.
Their commentary of the Shawnee O'Shea kick against the Dubs in the semi-final last year is unbelievable. So sat down with the two of them in Killarney and Ambrose's house, and I'll encourage anyone to watch it back. Half an hour of unbelievable insight and chats and crack. Ambrose was 22 years of age when he captained Kerry from All-Ireland in '84 against the Dubs in the final. But one of the clips he said, we don't have time to play that one this morning, but he said bringing Cluxton back smacks of desperation for the Dubs. So there was a lot of fighting talk going back and forth. I know. He says if that was happening in Kerry with all the young goalkeepers coming through, there'd be he thinks it's a disgrace. So had strong feelings on the Dubs. And there was a lot of smack talk going back and forth. So please check out that interview if you have time this morning, or even if you're driving up or getting the train up.
Was that stirring the pot, do you think, or is that a real point? Because the evidence is that it was a smart decision. No?
Yeah, that'll be the evidence. And but I genuinely believe Ambrose firmly believes that. And they were also, and at the end of the interview, just wrapping up, and Tim Moynihan calls out Anthony Moyles. Moyles has taken a bit of a hit from Kerry fans over the last few weeks for his opinions on the show. I think it all stemmed from the Tyrone quarter-final when he called Tyrone to win. The draw was made live on air with us, or we were reacting to the draw live on air, and straight away when Kerry were paired with Tyrone, Anthony's response, of course, was bye-bye Kerry. Yeah. And Kerry fans have not let him forget it. So that, I'd encourage people to watch that one. The other interview, and we have a clip of it here, is Darragh Caneja, out and on Gaeltacht Club. He's the chairman of the club now, and a Kerry legend himself, captain, of course, the team in 2004. But he gave his confident Kerry prediction. Have a look.
They brought the best out of us. They finished on top in 13, 16, 19 even. It was heartbreaking, and the way I look at it, and the bigger picture stuff, and again, this is not something that players will be talking about, or Jack O'Connor and the lads will be talking about this week, and the big picture, the broad canvas, you're looking at Dublin have taken an awful lot away from us, an awful lot of prestige away from us as a county. Again, it's not something that you'd like talking about before or after a game, but every single thing that we hold dear down here in Kerry, Dublin have achieved, and done better than us. They've emulated, and it hurts. It does hurt, and there's part of you hopes that the players get that. It's not going to make a blind bit of difference at half 3 on Sunday, but it's just that little bit extra. I sensed it even against Tyrone in the quarter final that Kerry were hurting. And sick of this talk of this genuine rivalry is there. What about the rivalry when Kerry win? Which they had done in 15 and 19, and we beat Dublin last year. By the last kick of the game, and Dublin were missing their best player, and they've brought back 3 or 4 more lads, and they have Pat Gilroy on the sideline. They're seriously stacked coming into this game, but we'd like to think we're stronger as well, and we'd like to think that an All-Ireland win in your locker does make a difference to you as a footballer. And I do think that there's more scope for improvement. I do think there's players in that Kerry team that we've seen a good lot of now, but I think there's more in them. And I think we'll see it again next year and the year after. But it's next Sunday that matters, and it's next Sunday that counts. And I just, I can't see as a Kerry man anything other than a Kerry win. I thought 6 or 7. I thought we were 6 or 7 points better teams in the semi-final last year. They played games to work down the clock. Yes, they have got all those players back, and I don't say that out of disrespect to any of them. We respect absolutely what they've achieved in the game, but I just feel there's a kind of a tide in the affairs of men that comes, and it's Kerry's time now, and they've never done back-to-back under Jack O'Connor. So many other reasons, but you get sick of talking it after a while. Just throw in the ball at half 3 and let's see what happens.
And Darrow Canada,
I know, unbelievable. He really is. Were you in the Patio Shea bar? Did you stop?
No, didn't get out to Ventry, just close by. But Dara is such a legend, and everyone around the club there thinks so and agrees. So I think he's one of these players that, when you look back on his career now, and even that 0-1 quarter-final doubleheader against Dublin in Thurles, like the drawn game, and then the replay when Morris Fitz hits the sideline in the drawn game, unbelievable. Like when you listen to Dara there, Charlie Redmond during the week saying he thinks Dublin are stronger all over the pitch than Kerry, and Dara there saying he can't see anything other than a Kerry win. So one of these things is going to have to fold at half 3 on Sunday, guys, and confidence on both ends.
Anthony Ryan says the Kerry lads have a bit of a hard neck complaining of accommodation costs in Dublin when they've been rubbing it into the Yanks and Irish people who decide to spend their few bob in Kerry for years. So there we go. What's you're flying up, I presume, shortly, are you? And what's your prediction?
Yeah, flying up later on this morning back to the Big Smoke. To be honest, I was leaning towards Dublin earlier in the week, and I've come full circle. I'm thinking Kerry by a point or 2. It's going to be a tight game though.
Wow. So that's what a bit of time in Kerry will do to you.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
They've convinced me 100%.
It's the breakfast and fireys that does it. It's the tomatoes. Come here, safe travelling, and all the good stuff is up on our YouTube channel as well, like you've mentioned, so people can go and check out the extended piece as well. Come on, well done, good work.
Cheers, guys. Long ago.
Thanks, Shane. Off the Ball is coming to the Cork Podcast Festival. You can join us on Sunday, the 27th of August, in the Cork Opera House. Barry Murphy will be in the house, and a few other famous faces to be announced as well. For tickets, you can head along to corkpodcastfestival.ie/Off the Ball. And up next, ahead of the final weekend of the Rugby Championship, Matt Williams will assess where the Southern Hemisphere teams are at with the World Cup on the horizon.
You're listening
to OTB AM. The Coigig Pod on OTB Sports.
I'm so sad. So sad. It took me a minute. It actually took me a minute to realise what just happened.
I was up in the air. If I hadn't been wearing heels, I probably would have taken off on a sprint. It's all going so well.
That changed everything. Their substitutes, our substitutes, it really changed the balance of the game.
Subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Alright, as promised, to look ahead to the final weekend of a curtailed Rugby Championship and what it'll mean for the Rugby World Cup. Particularly delighted to say Matt Williams is on the line. Morning, Matt.
Morning, Adrian. Morning, Aisling. How are you?
All is good. We've Australia, New Zealand tomorrow morning at the MCG, and then over to Joburg for South Africa against Argentina later in the day. What is the mood like in Australia? Trepidation, or maybe if things go our way here, what is the mood?
Well, actually, my daughter's in Melbourne. They've gone down to watch the game, and I think everyone's there enjoying the laneways and the food and the coffee and the pubs, and they have to go to the rugby and get beaten by New Zealand, and they can do it all again after that. So that's it's more a mood of resignation that we're going to have some humble pie off the Kiwis yet again, which we've had for the last 2 decades. So, Australia, it's a very different Wallaby side. They've made a lot of changes. And so to me, that's an experimental side. Wow, you don't usually go and experiment against a team that has those black jerseys on. They can make you pay. So it's difficult.
Does he have no option, Matt? Like you say, the proximity of the World Cup, but the evidence of what we've seen over the last few weeks and beyond, is he been backed into a corner here?
Yeah, I think so. Let's spin back a little bit. Putting Eddie in a year before the World Cup, if he kept the same assistant coaches, I think would have had a much greater effect. Eddie brushed up the entire staff, brought in completely new staff, literally, or what are we now? The first game was less than 2.5 months before the start of the World Cup. And so there's new systems, new way of speaking, new way of doing things, new training, and the whole team is just not gelling. And that's understandable. So while Eddie is talking about this World Cup, he's got his eyes really on the World Cup in Australia. The second part of that is the three-quarter line he's been picking with Quade Cooper at 10 and Nick White at scrum half, like that, and then he had Hodge at 12. All these guys are in their 30s and they're well past their prime. The problem they've got is he doesn't believe they've got anyone else. So the selection of Carter Gordon at 10, I think, is a massive, massive step. He's a really exciting young player. He's quite slight. And is he ready for top flight international rugby, and not just ready, but to lead Australia to a win in top flight international rugby? That's a very big question. Change the three-quarter line, and again, Adrian, I'll come back to your point. I don't think he had any choice. The three-quarter lines that he's been putting out just have not been at international standard. There's no way to say it. So, and to give your listeners, just how far Australian rugby's fallen, that three-quarter line will not be selected in any of the Six Nations teams. Perhaps Italy, and then even maybe not Italy with the 10. Now, if 20 years ago, when Australia had Gregan, Steuben Larkin, you had Sterling Mortlock at outside centre, you had Matt Ghetto at inside centre, you had Latham at fullback. These were great Australian backlines with great players, some of the best in the world, and the quality of the player being produced in Australia for a long time now, but particularly at the moment, has just dried up. And Eddie is paying that price, but it is not the national coach's problem. It is the system below the national coach in Australia, just as it is the system in Ireland that is producing such great players where Ireland are now ranked number one. Now, that is the reason Ireland are ranked number one, because they've got a great system and a great coaching staff at the top of that system. But Australia are really struggling with both at the moment.
Well, Matt, where does that leave them then at the minute? Like, momentum is everything in sport. Lost to South Africa, lost to Argentina, coming up against the All Blacks now. It's incredibly difficult to get any momentum going for the World Cup if you're getting these type of losses.
Yeah, 100%, actually, 100%. And that's, and as you said, it's a much shortened championship. You don't have 6 games, and we usually have a 7th, because they usually play New Zealand 3 times in the year for the Bledisloe. That's the normal agreement outside of a World Cup. So, Eddie's got very few games. I know they've got one other warm-up game, but he's giving people time, and he's got to do that. Every other team in the championship, with the exception of New Zealand this week, is doing that. New Zealand have selected their best side, in my opinion, and it's a great New Zealand side, not a good one, a great New Zealand side, with Richie Mo'unga at 10, Barrett at fullback. I was very surprised that Mackenzie wasn't on the bench. I'm not sure if he's injured, but that is a very, very good New Zealand side. Great pack, great three-quarter line, lethal back 3. And they're getting lots of cohesion. Now, they're in a different scenario because they have to play France in game 1 of the World Cup. So usually at the World Cup, that first game's a bit of a damn squib. It's the host nation against someone, and it's usually a lopsided game. That's going to be one of the great games of the championship. Game 1, and whoever wins that will top their pools. France versus New Zealand in Paris, first opening match. That's a brilliant game. So New Zealand have to be ready to be at their peak for that. Australia and Ireland and most of the other countries don't. They've got 2 games leading in to the World Cup to pick it up. So Australia's got a little bit of time, but look, I always try and say what evidence. So when I speak to you, I try and say, what evidence can I bring to back up an argument, and I've got no evidence that Australia are going to go any further than the quarterfinals.
Yeah. It is certainly hard to make a case otherwise. It's been entertaining, I think, to listen to Eddie as well in the press during the week. He's, in terms of the backed into a corner bit, giving it both barrels, talking about how New Zealand sinks when they lose a rugby match. The whole country, the economy goes down. He even managed a little pop at the New Zealand rugby writers, fans with keyboards. This is classic Eddie Jones territory.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It often helps when you got someone to back it up on the field, I find.
Yeah. Well, on that, Matt, I was having a look at it last night, just on your point there, just in terms of trying to make a case. Like, you know, you mentioned obviously the first time starter at 10. They have 11 players in the starting 15 with under 30 caps, including 6 of them with 10 caps or less. Like, it's not, as Stuart Lancaster always talks about, sort of the cap profile of a team and how you're trying to manage that at some sort of a medium level as you go. It's extraordinary. It's really hard. I mean, I presume that Wales and Fiji are looking at all this, licking their chops.
Yeah, look, I think Australia are very fortunate with a draw at the World Cup. I think they're in a very a much easier draw than Ireland. You know, Ireland are in the hardest draw by a considerable margin. Tonga will be a very difficult team at this World Cup that are in Ireland pool because of the new laws where players that have played for Australia or New Zealand or France or any other country, if you're not selected for 3 years, you can go back and play from the country of your heritage. So they have picked up a lot of former Wallabies and including Israel Folau and New Zealand players. So they're going to be a very physical side. You know, Wales, I think, are very weak at the moment, and I've got to say that. I thought Wales were terrible during the Six Nations, and I see, you know, nothing that's going to say anything different. I'm not suggesting that Australia are going to walk over them by 50, but, you know, that they are not a strong side, and I think they'll have enough for the Fijians. So they've got a very easier pool than just about anyone else. So and let's say they lose to Wales, I suspect they'll finish in the top 2. I can't see Australia missing the top 2, but I also can't see them. They'll then pull England or Argentina, and, you know, again, that side of the pool is much weaker. They should have beaten Argentina, even playing terribly as they were last week. They should have beaten them, and then they can beat England. Although the physicality and the size of the English forwards, they always struggle with the Wallabies. So if they pull the Pumas in a quarter, they've got a hope of making the semi. So that side of the draw has a much easier run to a semi-final than the Irish side of the pool. You know, like 2 of the top 4 teams in the world are not going to make the semis. That's just the fact, because of the way the vagaries of the draw. But Australia have an easy one. But if we come back to your point, teams only win World Cups with an average above 30 caps across the team. That's an historical fact, and it's something that Eddie's often quoted. And again, I don't blame Eddie for this. He's only been in there. Australian rugby has been, as I've often said on your show, and I've often written in the Irish Times, and it gives me no joy, because I owe Australian rugby because it produced me. I came through a fabulous system as player and coach, and it helped me enormously. And all of us have had to watch that system deteriorate and actively be dismantled by the people who were running Australian rugby across the last 2 decades. It's one of the great sporting, you know, I don't often like to say tragedies because, you know, sport doesn't have tragedies, but it's one of the great sporting failures of this century is what's happened in Australian rugby. And also the fact that people were living in denial for so long about what was happening in the men's 15-a-side game. Other aspects of the game have really grown in Australia. Sevens, our women's program, have really grown. But the men's 15-a-side game, particularly in Sydney, which is the heartland, has dropped in numbers and quality, as has our coaching. Our coaching used to be world-class, top leaders in the world. You talk to some of the players who aren't Australian that go to Australia now, and they are shocked at the standard of coaching they're receiving at the provincial level, like at the Waratahs or the Force and the Reds. They are shocked compared to where they've come from. All that is self-inflicted wounds. It gives me no joy, and I feel quite sad saying that. And I can't. We've got some really good leadership there at the moment. Phil Waugh just been appointed CEO, and that's been a big problem. Is our leadership in the boardroom. Not everyone's blaming the coaches. A series of wallabies. This is not a coaching problem. This is an administrative problem about how we are running the game and how we are coaching the game on the aspects below the Wallabies. We used to have a philosophy of play, how we played the game. I was brought up on that philosophy of play. And as Ireland, I was begging Ireland to have a philosophy of play for the last 20 years, and they've got it. And they brought, and Andy Farrell's undying credit, and he has revolutionised Irish international rugby because he adopted a philosophy of play that was Leinster's. So now we've got a philosophy of play that starts at the schools and moves all the way through to the national team. A philosophy of play is it from the bottom up, as Leinster's is from the ground up. And you can see Munster starting to play that style of rugby now. Munster in their run to win the ERC started to play that style. So we're starting to see that spread right across Ireland, and that pinnacles out into a national team. Now, I heard you talking about the GA football final, on the weekend. Same sort of thing, where you're getting these two great teams that have a way of playing. So it's not just a rugby thing. This is a sporting thing across the world. It could even be an educational thing in mathematics, how you have a syllabus that starts and grows as you move up through the years. It's exactly the same. And Australia has walked away from being the leaders in the world on that, which is a pretty extraordinary statement, isn't it? Pretty extraordinary.
Something that Irish soccer, actually, as you talk, it's got a lot of parallels there. They need to get their head around. Not to further annoy you here, Matt, before we wrap, but as Australia are going that direction, New Zealand are very much headed in the opposite direction. What's your sense of, there was obviously all the chat about Ian Foster and the succession plans in place now. I don't know, are people suddenly regretting that, or is this, he seems to be getting a serious tune out of them. Have they improved in terms of your overall thoughts around their outlook for the World Cup over the last few weeks, or what's your sense of what's gone on over the Tasman?
Well, I've said to everyone, if you're having a break from rugby before the World Cup, do yourself a favour and watch the first 20 minutes of New Zealand versus South Africa and watch the team in black. It's some of the best rugby you'll ever see in your life. They were scintillating, absolutely scintillating. It was just a pleasure to watch, and when the game is played like that, it's so entertaining. It was just brilliant to watch. And they're playing great rugby. Again, that's not good news for Ireland because you're looking at who's the worst team in the Ireland side of South Africa. My goodness. And, how can you say they're the worst team? They're still a great side. They put 40 points on the Wallabies. But New Zealand were brilliant. It's hard to lay your finger on. You know what I do think, Adrian, that Ian Foster was subject to the worst attack I've ever seen on a coach in any sport. And it was disgraceful. The New Zealand media should hang their head in disgrace, as should the New Zealand CEO, and who did not back their coach or their board. And he was vilified in a way no sports person should be. He did nothing wrong except this team lost. And I think he just said, I can't put up with this. I don't want this isn't worth it. And you know what? I think he's happy with that, and I think he's relaxed. And I think that's come across into the team. He knows the end point. And he's going to say, I'm going to enjoy this World Cup. I've been the All Black coach. I'm getting out now. I don't have to put up with this rubbish anymore. And Robbo's a great coach. Scotty Robinson is coming in. Fantastic guy, great coach. So their succession plan is great. But I think there is a much more relaxed air amongst the team. They are precise in what they're doing. They've got a good plan, and they are settled into their ways. Now, remember, they sacked the New Zealand side, did get rid of Plumtree, was their forwards coach, and they got rid of 3 of their assistant coaches, and they brought in 3 other very good coaches. Jason Ryan running the forwards from the Crusaders as one, and that took a while to bed in. But it has bedded in, mate. And if they play like that against Australia at the MCG, you can't see anything. You can see 50 points coming, and that's really sad for the Wallabies in Australia. But unfortunately, unless something happens that I can't see, 50 points would not be a shock to me.
I normally end these pieces with enjoy the games. I'm not sure that's hugely appropriate, Matt, but we will catch up with you down the track. Thanks a million for that.
Pleasure, guys. Good to see you.
That Matt Williams and the line. They're looking ahead to that final weekend of Rugby Championship action. The philosophy bit is kind of interesting. Definitely the football thing jumps out at me a mile.
Mm-hmm.
If Stephen Kenny goes, do we what happens?
Yeah.
And the same question, obviously, in relation to Vera Pauw.
Is that what Eddie Jones is trying to do there? Just when he has these players in that don't have a hell of a lot of caps, he's trying to build something. Is that what he's trying to do? Is he looking to, like Matt said, the next World Cup?
I would genuinely say that he's just looking at it, and he's just no option. Like, I'd say he's looked at the team over the last few weeks. He's looking at ageing players in key positions, at 10 particularly, and he's just thinking, I can't go into a World Cup like this. He may well end up going back to Quade Cooper. That's imminently possible, I would say. But at least he's developing some succession that if he does in the middle of the World Cup, like it's I don't know, we can say it as because we come from where we come from and the draw has gone the way it's gone. I'm sure Australians are thinking the draw being held so far out from the World Cup is an absolute masterstroke and it's great, and we'd be saying the same thing if it was on us. But like Matt has outlined a path for Australia through to a quarter final there. That's not a crazy path, even as low as they are, whereas we're going to be at the pin of our collar to get there. And we're look where we are and where they are a better team than Australia, whatever else you want to say. But you're to Thurles on Saturday and then Croker on Sunday.
Yeah, busy weekend. Looking forward to it. Yeah, great weekend is right. Yeah, it should be some good games. Very much looking forward to Saturday now. It's a tough one to call, as I was saying. Yeah. So yeah, it should be good. And then straight up the road.
Who are you with on Sunday?
On Sunday I am with Paddy Andrews.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Yeah, Paddy is always good to cover the game, so we have a good laugh.
Tommy was saying in the pod during the week that since he's come on to the football pod that Dublin haven't won in All Ireland.
Oh God. Yeah, well, geez, he is funny just beside watching the games, like
passionate, like
and he's obviously a true Dub, and you can see that in him. When I do it with Tommy Welch, you know, obviously he's mad Kilkenny, but he'll tone it a small bit, not Paddy.
All right, well listen, enjoy them. Pleasure as always, Aisling. Good
Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks a million. It is 9:39 Friday morning. Monday show will be Ger and Nathan. Performance rankings. We'll have the All Ireland football final reaction with the former Manchester United manager Anthony Moyles. Will be coming your way. For people who've been with us for the full show, they may get that. Aisling's looking at me like, what are you talking about? We're going to hear from the winning camp as well. We hope Linda Gorman is going to preview Ireland's final World Cup game against Nigeria, and we'll have plenty more as well. Right now, Shane Hannon's full chat with a certain Kerry man ahead of the All Ireland decider on Sunday. Have a wonderful weekend.
How are things? It's All Ireland Senior Football Championship final build-up. I've done the crack in Dublin. Now it's time for the crack in Kerry. Landed in the beautiful Farn 4 airport near the Fireys this morning. What a lovely part of the world. I met Dublin Jerry last week in Dublin. He's a Dublin GAA super fan, so I figured I'd balance out the books and meet a bit of a Kerry super fan this week. So we're near the Fireys Club, and a man I met on the side of the road has kindly invited me into his home for a little bit of a chat ahead of the game between Kerry and Dublin this weekend. Owen, is it?
Yeah, I was going to say Shane as well, right? We didn't properly introduce ourselves earlier, but that is your name, isn't it?
That is my name. So it's Owen Sheehan, he tells me his name is. So I just turned around there so you can get a good look at him. You're probably not used to seeing him on screen. Lovely Kerry jersey you have, Owen. A lovely Kerry home you have here as well. You've got all the flags and the bunting out. Have you been a Kerry fan all your life?
Just a recent convert, actually. Yeah, I just flew home, and I've heard that there was the sports event happening in Dublin. Gaelic football is what it's called, and you've got a capital city in Dublin which should be winning All Irelands every single year, but there's this fairy tale brewing this year. This county called Kerry, this poor unlucky county, a big underdog in a sporting sense. So I guess it tapped into my heartstrings as a sports fan. So as of the last couple of days, I said I'd put everything behind Kerry and their worthy cause for this weekend.
You were telling me there before we started on air that you flew home yesterday. So were you travelling or? What was the crack? How long were you away for?
I was away for a year thereabouts. Actually, as it turns out, the more I've read about this Kerry GAA thing, it turns out that actually they are All Ireland champions, and they won this championship last year. So it's funny actually that just coincided with my departure, and my return coincidentally seems to have happened right on time for this game this weekend. So obviously there is some sort of external extraterrestrial force at play here that has dictated that my time away on the other side of the world has exactly happened at this juncture.
It worked out well, and you obviously you'll be aware of the Kerry stereotype, the cute kind of Kerry fan that plays down chances. You booked your flight home, I noticed, for after the semi-final and for before the final. So I'm guessing this isn't a coincidence.
Well, I mean, it is a coincidence. It's a pure coincidence. It's these things just tend to happen. I'm very, very fortunate that Kerry versus Dublin is happening this weekend. There was absolutely no planning whatsoever done when I happened to be booking these flights back in February, March. Pure coincidence that Kerry happened to be playing this weekend. Yeah.
South America, was it? You were travelling for the...
That's where I was. Yeah, that's where I was. Not a massive GAA stronghold, but a little bit of GAA down there as well. But no, it wasn't the same thing to be able to experience, Kerry GAA across the world. It's just not the same. It's one thing maybe watching Premier League and other sports. It's very, very difficult to actually feel the fervour and the proper cute Kerry heroism when you're in a different part of the world entirely.
I don't know if you've ever heard of the Kerry Mafia. So there's this group of I suppose super fans you call them as well.
Interesting.
Funny enough, there's a lad on as part of the Mafia. I think he could be the chairperson. His name is Owen as well. So it's obviously a popular name down these parts.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've come across. I know you only landed home yesterday, so you might not be familiar. But
no,
what's he like? It's a pretty exciting group. Owen.
Yeah.
I've heard good things.
Right.
I've heard good things, but have you been invited into this mafia as of yet?
No, I heard he's a bit of a dick, that guy, to be quite honest with you, and there's been absolutely no invite whatsoever. I heard there's actually quite almost like a sort of anti-external view inside the Kerry Mafia. No outsiders are invited. So as somebody who's not been here for quite some time, I think I'd be very, very lucky indeed to get to spend time and rub shoulders with these geniuses and the intelligentsia of Gaelic games. But you never know. Maybe you do get lucky. Maybe dreams do come true, and this weekend I might be able to meet one or two of them.
So you're obviously a Kerry fan since birth. This is your lovely home that you've invited me into. Your lovely parents, Carmen and John, as well, and all the family have been very kind and open to me. And I just bumped into you on the road, which was a lovely. You were obviously. I think you were thumbing a lift, which was clearly maybe a habit or PTSD from your South American days, but. Thank you so much for bringing me into your home. Does this happen often in All Ireland Build-Up Week? Do you just bring random strangers into your home?
I generally stand outside 24/7. You will have seen the tents down at the bottom of the road. So I camp there whenever I hear a car. Mm-hmm. I just come out and I guess flash the Kerry jersey that I'm wearing, and hope that a journalist or two will be stopping by in order for me to gain more fame and traction for my brand, which is of course a number one Kerry superfan. So hopefully I'll be able to appear on all the front of the local papers. I'm willing to hand out my address to anybody who slides into my DMs. So please come on by and just say that you're a journalist, and I'll send you my address and you can pop in and interview me. Please give me attention.
Is this your first time on national media or national airwaves?
Yeah, as you can tell, I'm quite nervous about this as well. So this is quite a big moment for me. But you've been very kind. You've told me how this was going to work, and I think it's been quite a positive experience.
So this is a microphone. So what happens is we basically talk into this.
Okay.
And then this picture goes onto the magic of YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and that sort of thing, and people can leave really lovely comments. And generally speaking, like I present at the moment, just for the last year, it's a morning show called OTB AM. It's the sports breakfast show from Off the Ball.
Nice, congratulations.
Thank you. Weekdays from 7:30 till 10 o'clock. So it's lovely. Obviously, it means early mornings. Hopefully, we can have a new fan now in Owen Sheehan.
Yeah, for sure. So you said you're on the YouTube. I must.
It's youtube.com/Off the Ball. I'm not sure if the broadband has made its way to the Fireys or Farn 4 yet, but if you have it, I'd highly recommend it.
Once it arrives, yeah, for sure, I'll be able to check out this youtube.com thing that you mentioned there. So I'll be able to watch, and God, it's a great opportunity that you've given me here. That I'm sure many more people will stop by my house as a result of the opportunity.
How do you feel generally on all it? This is why he's the greatest, folks. He can keep the straight face, I can't. All Ireland final week, Owen. I guess since you were a kid, you've had the luxury. Us Monaghan people wouldn't understand this feeling, but All Ireland final week, filled with nerves, filled with tension, filled with pints in the Boar's Head and other places. So, has it ever? Do you remember your first All Ireland final week? Sorry, as a Kerry fan.
No, I don't remember the week of it. I remember generally being at the game. It was a 2000 replay against Galway. It was the first time I was at an All Ireland final. I remember generally being there. I don't remember much beyond that. Didn't go to the 02 or the 04 final. So I guess the first final that I properly remember, unfortunately, is 2005 when it comes to actually being in Croke Park and Peter Canavan scoring that goal right in front of me. So that was probably the first vivid All-Ireland final week, build-up day that I can properly remember, and it was a bad one. And maybe it's the PTSD from that gives me still a little bit of caution when it comes to every single All-Ireland final week. But generally there have been some very, very good memories. Mayo have stepped up to the plate and delivered some good memories. Cork, a big thank you to them and a big shout out to them, 07-09. And to be fair, if Kerry win on Sunday, probably thank Cork for the favour that they did for Kerry in terms of beating Mayo earlier in the year and carving out this beautiful path that Kerry then had to the All-Ireland final. So people have been very good to us. Tyrone have been shit to us, Dublin have been shit to us, but hopefully the tables can turn on this, because you'll hear that stat all week, 1985 and the last time that Kerry actually beat Dublin in an All-Ireland final. So seeing the blue jerseys and all that, thankfully I'm not in Dublin this week, there's a bit of PTSD about that for sure. So it's kind of checkered when you think back to All-Ireland final week. The expectation, the hope, sometimes it's crushed, sometimes it actually leads to like a real feeling of ecstasy, like last year for example.
I understand that when you were in Ireland before your time abroad, you would have been a bit like the Kerry Mafia, actually, a regular Kerry fan, a match going fan, so you would have been going to the league matches and all the rest. So were you able this year, I guess, in your time abroad, to watch the matches, tune into the matches on radio, or what was your general match day experience when you were abroad?
Well, every game other than Kerry Louth, including the league, was available to watch. Obviously there were a lot of complaints here about a lot of them being available on GEA Go as opposed to free to air, but when you're abroad you don't really care, so every single game other than Kerry Louth was available. But that game was of course carried live on Radio Kerry, so I could catch it there, watch the tape back later. But it was very, very straightforward. But it was just me and the laptop, really. There was never really any great moment of an Irish pub anywhere abroad. Plenty of Irish pubs, but none of them really with a huge moment for any of the Kerry games. The biggest one was probably last 2 weeks ago for Kerry versus Derry in Atlanta, Georgia, where I guess there was maybe a dozen GEA fans, but by the time I got to New York last weekend, it was hurling final weekend, so that would have been the place to watch a Kerry game, I'm sure. But no, unfortunately there wasn't a big Kerry GEA supporters group in Peru or Colombia or anything like that, but never say never, maybe in the future.
And as you mentioned, of course, the GEA Go and the Radio Kerry, we could have always, of course, got a lot of the build-up and the post-match analysis as well on Off the Ball on OTB AM, this sports breakfast show for whom we're speaking now. So how are you feeling about this week? As you say, those kind of sky blue jerseys can strike fear into certain counties. I guess back in the 70s and 80s, Kerry certainly had the Dubs number. 2011, it probably brings back bad memories for you. Last year semi-final, and I guess made up for that somewhat. But how are you feeling this week?
Pretty confident in what Kerry are going to do. Not so confident about the results. It's impossible to call. I don't think anybody can be fully, I guess, forthright in what they think is going to happen. I've heard some people quite forthright, like listening to Joe Brawley on with Tomás O'Shea during the week. He's not really giving Kerry a chance. He thinks Dubs by 6 or more. If I'm not mistaken, I think maybe Vinnie Murphy was saying something similar on Twitter. So there is a coterie of people who really believe that Dublin will win well this weekend. But I'm confident that that's not going to happen. I'm not saying I'm confident Kerry are going to win, but I'm confident that at least.
Well, that's what you're saying, I think.
Yeah. I'm at least confident that I don't think it's a hot take to suggest that the All-Ireland champions are able to hold a candle to Dublin. I don't think it's an overstatement at all. Like, one of the things Brawley was saying during the week was that no Kerry player other than David Clifford and maybe Shane Ryan will get into Tomás O'Shea's team of the 2000s, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think there's been this narrative around Kerry where the over-reliance on Clifford talk has turned into this sort of talk about the rest of the team being crap, or that they're like patsies in this team, which is just nonsense, really. Like, when you go through every single line of the team, whether it's Tom Sullivan and Jason Foley, or Gavin White, Diarmuid O'Connor, Sean O'Shea, Paddy Clifford, I think there are plenty of players outside of David Clifford who would get into the Dublin team, who might get into the Kerry team of the 2000s. And then you've got the potential that they have inside in that full forward line as well. I think Kerry haven't been potent in the inside forwards outside of David Clifford, and people have maybe got a little bit carried away with themselves, thinking that this team as a whole is mediocre, which is not the case. Kerry are not mediocre. Kerry are an excellent team. Dublin are an excellent team. These are the best two teams in the country, and I think anybody who says that Kerry outside of Clifford aren't a very good team, I'm not sure have they maybe grasped the point of this team, or maybe watched enough of this team, to be honest.
There's been a bit of disrespect hurled at Kerry this year. I think probably the nature of the Mayo game maybe in Killarney was the turning point where everyone was like, this Kerry team don't have it. But it seemed throughout the year that every team that even won their province or performed well in the groups all had bad days, and that just turned out to be Kerry's blip, I guess.
Yeah, it did, and I'll go back to it. Kerry are very fortunate that Mayo did lose to Cork, because that did alter the shape of the season completely. Even Tyke Morley, when he was talking to Tommy during the week, made that point that
Tommy Rooney for off the ball, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you know him.
You're familiar.
I am. He's very, very famous around these parts. Poster up in my room and all that. So he was. Tyke Morley had the pleasure of talking to him during the week, and he was making the point that they were prepared for a very disrupted schedule, and then it came along and it was a nice, tidy 2 weeks off game schedule, and that's led into the All Ireland final. So that Mayo game was extraordinary. Kerry didn't go out to lose it or anything like that. They wanted to keep that Killarney championship record. It's a very proud record they've had since the mid-90s. But Jack O'Connor just has this amazing ability to turn a season around when the chips are down. He's the one man you want on the sideline when you're having a bit of a lull in the season. He's done it before. It kind of feels a little bit like 2009. They came back after a pretty disappointing start to the championship season, and then hammered the life out of a big team in a quarter final, and now they find themselves back in an All-Ireland final. The one difference with 2009 is that Kerry won comfortably in that year's final. They're not going to win comfortably this weekend. I don't think either team is going to win comfortably this weekend. It's going to be a very, very tight match, but it is as big as it gets in our national sport. In Gaelic games, a final between Kerry and Dublin. It's only the 17th time it's ever happened in history. It's a final between these two teams. It's a special moment. It's as big as an occasion can possibly get in Gaelic games. It's like Barbie versus Oppenheimer in Gaelic games form. This is really two titans of the game. It was maybe Oppenheimer versus Oppenheimer, to be fair. Like two titans of the game.
Who's Barbie?
That not everybody like. David Clifford is Barbie, obviously, and Conor Callaghan is Oppenheimer. Finally, we've got some definition on what this rivalry between these two great players actually means. But maybe these are two teams that maybe everybody hates. Going toe to toe, and everybody hates them because they're a cut above the rest. With all due respect to Derry and Monaghan, who will probably refute that.
Before we let you go, Owen, and you've been very kind to bring me into your home, and your lovely mother Carmel making me a cup of tea and plenty of breakfast and food there. So that was a lovely welcome. I have to say, I'm a big Kerry fan now after this weekend already. How is the game going to go? What's your ultimate match prediction?
I think Kerry will win. But I'm not sure. You tell me. Am I like allowing my vision to just get glassy-eyed and green and gold tinted? Is that the way I'm looking at this? Because is the evidence telling us that Dublin are actually in a better place to win this game? Like the 2022 game has been used so much in the build up to this week. Kerry were better than Dublin that day, and Dublin are now better than they were that day, so therefore they're better than Kerry. I respect that logic, but to even further that logic, I would say that Kerry weren't that much better than Dublin on that occasion last year. The only thing that went the only difference between them last year was their conversion rate. I mean, they had the same amount of shots basically. I think they had about 23-24 shots apiece, and Kerry had a 69% conversion rate. Dublin had a 60% conversion rate. Have Dublin got better on that front this season? Yes, they have. Funnily enough, they actually had a 69% conversion rate in their semi-final against Monaghan this year, while Kerry were down to 60. So the tables have turned in terms of how slick they were in the semi-finals, and Dublin have all these players. And you've got the news yesterday that Tony Brosnan is out, so it limits one option that Kerry have in a bench battle that's been spoken as the defining feature in this game. So what is my evidence that Kerry are actually going to win this game, despite the fact that I'm predicting they're going to win? Well, the answer is, Shane, I don't know, other than David Clifford and this hope. And it is hope. This hope that there's going to be a few other big performances in those forwards, that Paul Geaney is going to put in one of his great performances, because he can do it on the big day. The hope that Killian Spillane comes off the bench and is fit and is ready to do what he did in 2019, that an Adrian Spillane or a Darragh Moynihan just has an absolute stormer, not necessarily kicking a score or anything, just dominating that middle third, giving Jack Barry and Diarmuid O'Connor help. So the reasons why I think Kerry will win is based on hope rather than expectation this weekend. However, the David Clifford factor is based on expectation beyond expectation, and I think that's probably what's just tipping me over the line here, that I can't not see him having a great game, and I think Kerry will do it.
Yeah, that Clifford Fitzsimons battle, if it is Michael Fitzsimons picking him up, it's going to be cracker. I think you're right. I don't think it's hard over head to say Kerry will win this game. I think you can make an argument for heart and head for Kerry in this. Even performances like Stephen O'Brien's in the second half of the semi-final, if more Kerry players can find the likes of that level, I mean, there's only going to be one winner.
Yeah, the only problem is that it's not